And so when I say Chinese, I want you to scream out the nation that's associated with this. For example, if I say Chinese, you're going to say what?
China.
All right, let's say it with authority. When I say Chinese, you say what? China. All right, that's just a test right there. So here we go. Chinese. China. Russian.
Russia.
Italian.
Italy.
German.
Germany.
Swedish.
Sweden.
Korean.
Korea.
Egyptian.
Egypt.
Nigerian.
Nigeria.
Black.
Exactly. Nothing. Tell him, Pastor. Tell him, Pastor. Black, nothing.
I hope you were able to successfully identify the issue.
The lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. They want us to sell our souls to barter profit. Like God's property, it's hard to market. So we steady to aim, keep your eyes on target. 'Cause when you got to drive, yeah, they'd rather you park it. But I don't valet, you ain't getting these keys. I'm keeping closed hands, I'm on bended knee. I'm just a reflection, dealing with 8 sections. Art mixed with life, you can feel the convection. Your lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the
This gentleman right here. Huh? What happened? No, this the gentleman right here with the camera in his hand. Wave your hand. Pastor.
James Wesley Carr.
Yeah, James Wesley Carr. No. What's your name?
Oh, Kelly Richardson.
Kelly Richardson.
Pastor Kelly Richardson.
He is a great grand nephew.
Yeah.
Nephew of one of our first pastors. Yeah, as a matter of fact, that's his uncle right here in the corner of the actual St. Glass window here to your left.
You got the eyes.
You look just like him. Got the same eyes anyway. Come on, guys. Come on.
That's funny.
Stand up there looking like. Look on the outside edge of the pews. Look on the outside edge of the pews where you are. You see the different markings alongside the edge of the pews? They represent the different tribes that made up our congregation back then and spoke over 6 different languages among themselves. These were small tribes enslaved by larger tribes and sold to Europeans as they came along the African coast. One of the major languages they spoke back then was that of Aramaic and also too of Hebrew, which means the writings read from bottom to top. Assalamu alaikum. Which means peace be unto you. It's not a Muslim term. It's actually the same greeting which Christ gave into the disciples when he met them in that region. Most countries in that region read from right to left. Here in America, we read from left to right. That's why the pastors in the St. Glass window up front here are going in numbers 2 through 7 from the right-hand side over to the left, to the left, to the left.
This is First African Baptist Church, the oldest black church in North America. The building, built by slaves. The gentleman that laid the first brick laid the last. The balcony hold pews that actually were built by slaves. They have the oldest information in this building. That information is written in cursive Hebrew writing.
I'm so glad you're here because you can bring great clarity. Can you tell us a little bit about the Sephardic Jews and how they were scattered? Because they went west.
I sure can.
Because the reason why I want to is because a lot of them, and a lot of people don't know this, are in the Caribbean.
They are.
In the islands.
And you're one of them. I know that.
I'm one of them.
I know that.
Because, you know, a lot of folk don't know that those roots are there. One of the first batches of slaves that came to Jamaica, they were the Sephardic Jews. It's documented.
And they're all over the Caribbean, South America, Central America, and even the South Central United States.
Wow.
And DNA testing is a factor in all this now.
You know what you are? You're an ancient Israelite.
Ancient Israelite. That's who we are. That's who we are. So you can
give me time. If you give me time.
But
How old are you?
I know. We don't have.
How many years?
I know. Look at this. This is pages and pages of
Yes.
notes. And I promise we'll give more teaching. But here is my challenge to you.
All right.
I'm hearing some of your traditions. It's like the days of the Bible.
Yes.
Do you want to remain ancient Israelites or you want to be Jews?
Planned Parenthood was made by Margaret Sanger, a known eugenics, with the KKK to control the Jew population. When I say Jew, I mean the 12 lost tribes of Judah, the blood of Christ, who the people known as the race black really are.
Hitler was, and the Nazis, of course, expanded on Margaret Sanger's approach to eugenics, right? Eugenics was a movement that was born in the United States under hard doctrines of racism with the intent of eliminating the tribe of Judah in the African-American community in this country, right? To eliminate them.
We're finishing now part 2, chapter 2. And what we've said so far is that people have free will and their actions are, some are good and some are evil. And by the way, the Rambam writes explicitly that everyone has some good actions and some bad actions. Everyone. And he takes it for granted that there'll be a variety. We talked about the fact that this world and the next world are asymmetrical. The next world is where the majority of a person's actions, which determine his identity, are compensated. For the righteous, they exist in the world to come and they're rewarded. And for those whose major complexion is black, are excluded from the world to come.
And you know what else, Jim? I just want to say this to our Christian friends, just to call it as it is and say it straight out, you guys are worshiping one Jew. That's a mistake. You should be worshiping every single one of us because we all die for your sins every single day. And that's exactly what's going on here. Yeah. We're all God's firstborn, and we're dying for your sins right now because the Jewish people in the land of Israel are the bulwark against the orcs. Mm-hmm. Okay? The orcs are coming not to a theater near you, but to your home.
The entire Bible is about black people. Not only was Jesus black, but every character in the Bible seems to be black too. Yeah, Zephaniah and Jeremiah and Jebediah, those all aren't white people names, okay? And Jesus wasn't some tan, partially melanated Middle Eastern person either. I'm talking straight up black dude, okay? Even in the book of Revelation, when you get the vision of Daniel, he's describing someone with feet like burnt brass and white woolly hair, and we've got the deep running water voice with the red eyes, and you guys, he's black. The Jewish people are black people, like Kanye was right.
So I'll go ahead and take the baton from Kanye, because he might still be napping. We don't even know. He never got to express himself more fully before the world had a breakdown.
Genesis chapter 11, verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you.
Want to say peace and blessings to everyone. Hope and pray all is well with you guys. Hope and pray that you guys are having had a great day. And so we're going to get into this here. Let me go ahead and make sure that my mic settings is correct here. Make sure that there's no issues here. All right. If my mic sounds good, just type 1 inside the chat. If my mic sounds good, type 1 in the chat. All right. All right. So I'll give some shout outs while I review the responses here. Let's see here. I want to say peace and blessings, Maureen Ya's daughter. I want to say peace and blessings to you. Shout outs to my sister Carol, Want to say peace and blessings to N, focus to C. Let's do some additional ones here. Want to say, let's see here. No, wait, please don't. Want to say shout outs to you. Peace and blessings to you. Let's see here. Van P. Want to say peace and blessings to you as well. Kataza Yashra Al. Want to say peace and blessings to you. Also, let's see here. Judah Tribe, Israelite Grammar. Want to say peace and blessings to you. Let's see here. Monica Curry. Want to say peace and blessings to you. Yesha Hofer. Want to say peace and blessings to you. Let's see here. Michael McQueen, excuse me if I mispronounce your name. My apologies. Charges to my head, not to my heart. Got to go a little old school with that. Also, Berean Scholar, shout out to my brother Berean Scholar in the building. Peace and blessings to you, my brother. Georgetta, want to say peace and blessings to you. Really appreciate the love and support. Let's see here. Linda Short, want to say peace and blessings to you. Kimmy, want to say peace and blessings to you. So far, it looks like everyone is in agreement. My mic is good. Let me see here. Arthur Stewart, peace and blessings to you. Obadiah, want to say peace and blessings to you. Let's see here. LaRonda Thomas, want to say peace and blessings to you. Let's see here. Let's get a couple more in. Hallelujah. Let's see here. William. All right. I want to say peace and blessings to you. Let me make sure I pronounce it correctly. Will Ah. Good morning, everyone from Perth, Western Australia. I want to say peace and blessings to you. Praying for you out there in Australia. I see some of the things that they are trying to pass in terms of law, the anti-Semitic law there to restrict, speech. So I want to say praying for you guys out there. Thank you for the love and support. Let's get a couple more in as well. Let's see here. I want to say peace and blessings to you, Sister Rita. Brother Ernest Higgs, haven't seen you in a minute. I want to say peace and blessings to you. Been supporting We Woke Now for years and been there during the growing pains and all. So really appreciate you. All right. So let's go ahead and get it in. I know that I didn't schedule this live early on and, but I did want to do this live. I was going to hold off and do this teaching next weekend, but I wanted to do it tonight. And so what we're going to do, we're going to piggyback off of what we did last night. I'm going to reteach what we taught last night, but then some. I want to make sure that we really understand the Spanish Inquisition. All right, because there's a lot that, like my grandmother would say, I left a lot of meat on the bones. So in this presentation, we are going to expose one of the most overlooked truths behind the Spanish Inquisition. Its roles and, it was not merely religious persecution, but a targeted campaign of displacement that helped reshape identity, erase inheritance, and rewrite the historical record. So by tracing documented expulsions across Europe, primary eyewitnesses accounts describing the Israelites of Spain and Portugal as distinctly, and just for the sake of discussion, we want to use the institutional race construct, Black, right? Distinctly Black, and academic sources confirming ancient Israelite migrations long before the Iberian exile. I'm going to show you how later European converts and colonial systems recast ancient covenant people into a religious narrative for total control. Now, I want to make this clear. This is not speculation. It's supported by travel journals, encyclopedias, historical geography, and it brings clarity to how the Inquisition's agenda echoed across Africa, India, the Atlantic world, producing the same patterns we still recognize today. expulsion, replacement, and stolen legacy. So those are some of the things that we're going to cover today. I just wanted to just make sure that we're all on the same page. We have a lot to cover. Let me say that again. We have a lot to cover. We have a lot of information to cover. So we're going to cover what we covered yesterday, but I made some adjustments and added some additional information so we can really bring the point home. And I'm going to give you more commentary. So just to explain the sources so that way you see how they interconnect. All right. So let's go ahead and get it going. Let's go ahead and get it going. And Berean Scholar and Sister Carol, I'll let you guys know when we open up the floor. I want to go ahead and get this plane off the runway, get it up in the air, and then I'll drop the link. Hallelujah. But let's go ahead and get into it. We have so much to cover. Shout outs to Jay Highstyle. All right, let's go ahead and get it in, family. Let's get it in. And before we could go on, hit that like button. It makes a world of a difference in the algorithms, the what you call it, the I forgot what they call it now. I can't even think of the reachability. It's another term that YouTube uses, but make sure you hit that like button and post in that comment section. That comment section makes a world of a difference on how the videos get out there. So post inside impressions. That's what I was looking for. So your participation in the chat, as well as after we wrap this video up, drop a line inside the comment section. That helps with the with what is called the impressions. All right. And then I believe YouTube added another feature. I noticed here, I've been meaning to say something about it. Let me see here. I think I have it up on my phone. And you guys probably heard that echo here. But let me see if I can. They added another feature to where you guys could kind of pump up the video or whatever, as far as in terms of, getting, I guess, allowing the video to get more traction. So I encourage you guys to do that as well. And lastly, if you have subscribed to the channel or believe that you're still subscribed to the channel, double check to make sure that you are still subscribed, because YouTube has been unsubscribing users, or should I say subscribers, right? And since we had this platform, on the course of this platform, the years of having this platform, they have removed over 25,000 subscribers. All right. So just thought I'd do a little house cleaning there. And for those that are interested in our Bible study, shoot me an email. We're having a great time with the Bible study. It's been growing. Of course, we have some filters in just to ensure that we don't have trolls coming into there. But if you're interested in our Bible study, our Torah study that takes place every Tuesday night at 7:30 Eastern time, drop me a line. All right. So with that being said, let's go and get into it here. All right. Let's deal with the Spanish Inquisition. All right. Benaiah Israel, my cousin, he did a great job with the Spanish Inquisition. A lot of information he shared. And so if he's in the chat, feel free to, when I drop the link, jump in. So what I'm going to start off again, you guys heard this clip, and we're going to kind of use this clip and another clip to set up what we're going to cover. All right, here we go. Now, let me know if you can hear it. Let's see. Let me unmute it. All right. I'll leave it like that. Actually, I think you guys should be able to hear it. Let me unmute it to make sure. All right. Here we go. If you can hear it, type 1. Here we go.
Black people just got to learn your history, man. You got to learn the minstrel shows, who's behind the minstrel shows. And
all right. Did you guys hear that, or do I need to play it again? All right. Let me do one more thing here before we get started. I forgot to do is put a setting here in the video setting. Let me do something real quick before we get started, get into the lesson. Let me do it right now before I forget. Or is it there? All right. I guess I can't do it from my phone. All right. Let me do one thing here, family. Let me go to my setting here just to make sure that this is set. And then we're going to continue here. Let me just do this real quick before I forget. All right. Just want to make sure I don't have any issues with feedback. So let me do something with this browser setting right now. All right. Okay. And let's see, where's that setting? All right. All right. There we go. There we go. All right. And I do want to encourage you guys, share the video, share the link, hack it up if you want, but share the link, share it on your YouTube spaces, share it on your Instagram spaces, share it on Facebook. I'm on. So let's go and get into it again. Let me play this one more time, and then we're going to go ahead and get into the lesson. Here we go.
Black people just got to learn your history, man. You got to learn the minstrel shows, who's behind the minstrel shows. And
all right. So Candace Owens, you heard it in her own words. She stated that Black people just got to learn their history, man. You got to learn the minstrels, or should I say the minstrel shows. Who's behind the minstrel shows? All right. So you heard it from her mouth. She said, we have to learn our history. This is the other thing I want to play. I played it last night, but I want you guys to hear this again.
So I'll go ahead and take the baton from Kanye, because he might still be napping. We don't even know. He never got to express himself more fully before the world had a breakdown.
All right. So she said that she's taking a baton, and she also said that he's napping. Right. So for me, I take it as if, like she was waiting to take, for him to take the lead, and she was going to follow his lead, as she disseminate this information. And so because he's still asleep, she's taking a baton and she's going to take it and run with it. Right. And this is not trying to throw any shade at Kanye West. We all know, and he proved it, that his trainer, prescribed him all kinds of drugs, and they really did a number on him, right? But anyway, so let's go to get into it, family. Just wanted to let that kind of be the preface to what we're going to cover tonight. Make sure that you guys are up to speed with exactly what happened in this history, because this is one area of history we really don't see many touching on. All right, and this is another area of deception. So let's get it in. I want to start off with this disclaimer here. All right. All right. Let me make this clear, family. I'm not going to allow anyone to come in and post any type of conspiracies. Don't say you're not in the person's personal space of Kanye West. Don't make any assumptions of what he didn't have and what he did have. He showed receipts. Moderators, if you see anyone posting comments like that, trolling, remove them. We're surrounded by a cloud of witnesses. He showed the receipts. So let's not even go there. To me, that's worse than crabs in a barrel. We're the only people that do stuff like this. He literally showed the receipts of what his trainer had done as far as drugging him up and making threats to where even Tucker Carlson changed his position. And I have the videos and I played the videos. So family, I'm not even going to use the crab in a bucket mentality, because then that's insulting crabs. So when you see crabs bundled together like that, that's a defense mechanism to protect them from for those that like intruders and those that want to eat them. So it makes them appear to be bigger than what they are. They trying to keep each other together. It's the ones that get outside of the group that tends to get eaten. So we're not going to do that here. And again, moderators, if anyone posts any comments like that, don't even give them a warning. Just kick them out, because we're not rolling with those things. You know, sometimes we act like we're living in the same household of these people. It's all right to voice an opinion, but when you get into stuff like that, I don't play when it comes to mental health. All right. So let's go to get into it again. I want to read this disclaimer. Moderators, you guys already know what to do, right? Let's get into it. These, in other words, the information I'm going to share, these are not rhetorical claims. They are conclusions drawn from documented sources, and they demand an honest accounting of history. Let me say this again. These, and this information that I'm referring to, the topic here, right? Exposing the Spanish Inquisition. These are not rhetorical claims. They are conclusions drawn from documented sources, and they demand an honest accounting of history. So what is race? This is foundational here. And family, you have to grab hold of this. What is race? And let's define what race is. This is according to Anthropology Newsletter, The Origin of the Idea of Race by Audrey Smetley, November 1997. This site is no longer available, but I will drop the link. Matter of fact, I'll do it right now before I read some bullets from this source. All right, let me go ahead and drop this link here. And even though this link is no longer available in terms of this URL, but you can still access it through the Wayback Machine. All right, so let me drop this inside the link here. All right, and if I can get one of the moderators, maybe Berean Scholar, if you can drop the link to the Wayback Machine, so family, you can vet the information as well, especially if I'm dropping a link. Vet the information. Vet the information. All right, so Anthropology Newsletter, The Origin of the Idea of Race. Audrey Smetley, November 1997, and she is an anthropologist. Okay. Contemporary scholars agree that race was a recent invention. So this is not an old thing. This is a recent invention. And this is what one of the things, this is kind of like the tactics of these manipulators, right? They'll come up with modern constructs and then they backdate it. Again, they'll come up with these modern constructs and then backdate it. They come up with all these labels like the term Sephardic Jew. That's not an ancient term. That's a 7th, 8th century term. All right. So contemporary scholars agree that race was a recent invention and that it was essentially a folk idea, not a product of scientific research and discovery. This is not new to anthropologists. It goes on to say the term race, which has been a classificatory term like type or kind, but with ambiguous meaning, became more widely used in the 18th century and crystallized into a distinct reference, right? For it has Africans here and has other groups here. But the key that I want you to make sure you understand is that word ambiguous. And it makes it clear it had nothing to do with any scientific equations. So it's based on stereotypes that they created. See, by focusing on the physical and status differences, so it's sort of a caste system based on stereotypes. By focusing on the physical and status differences between the conquered and enslaved peoples and Europeans, the emergent ideology linked to the socio-political status and physical traits together and created a new form of social identity. Take a screenshot of this. This is so important. So when you hear people say that identity doesn't matter, right? You can pull this source up and say that based off the institution of race, this is where you get the black, the white, the red, the brown. Though this is where you get this from. It comes from here. That's all part of the institution of race. Those all represents a new form of social identity. So identity, it does matter. So who is the architect of this system? Who is the architect of this system? Glad you guys asked. This gentleman right here by the name of Johann Friedrich Blumenbach, right? He is the one that created this system. And notice here it says German anthropologist. So he's an Ashkenazi. He's an Ashkenazi. German anthropologist, physiologist, and comparative anatomist, frequently called the father of physical anthropology, who proposed one of the earliest classifications of the races of mankind. So as a result, even when ancient texts, art, and eyewitness accounts describes Israelites, Moors, or Egyptians as black, anthropologists ignored or distorted the data to align with white supremacist ideology. This is where you get the word Mediterranean. This is where you get the description olive. This is where you get the description of tan or Arabic, or some of the different descriptors that you hear. Anything but the Negro. They developed Mediterranean to deceptively teach the origins of the ancient Egyptians. All right. Racist anthropologists came up with these descriptors. They're white supremacists. Okay. So what followed was the erasure of Negro identity from biblical, historical, and academic records, replacing the true bloodline Israelites with fabricated racial categories and modern sanitized labels that continue to mislead to this day. So my question is the Sephardic Jews biblical? Is the Sephardic Jews biblical? Now, every last one of you guys that are watching, you're the jury. You're the jury, and I am going through what is called the presentation of the evidence. Let me say that again. You are the jury. I'm going to do what, from a legal perspective and legal terms, I'm going to do what is called the presentation of the evidence. In the end, you have to make a decision. You have to make a decision. You have to work out your own salvation, right? Through fear and tremblings. All right, but anyway, is the Sephardic Jews biblical? Are they biblical? Let's go to Obadiah chapter 1, verse 20. It reads, "And the captivity of this host of the children of Israel shall possess that of the Canaanites, even unto Zarephath, in the captivity of Jerusalem, which is in Sepharad." Now, I want to make it clear, family, the actual ancient pronunciation of this name is Sepharad. There was no PH or F sound or F sound in ancient Hebrew. That comes from the Greeks. So that sound is not even an ancient sound. It has been interpolated by the Greeks. But anyway, let me read it one more time. "And the captivity of this host of the children of Israel shall possess that of the Canaanites, even unto Zarephath, and the captivity of Jerusalem, which is in Sepharad, shall possess the cities of the south." All right, now this is the Tanakh transliterated words of this same text. "And that exile force of Israelites shall possess what belongs to the Phoenicians as far as Zarephath or Zarephath, however you want to pronounce it, while the Jerusalemites, exile community of Sepharad, shall possess the towns of the Negev. All right, so at first glance, this passage seems to lend some validity to the so-called Sephardic Jews. Let me say that again. At first glance, this passage seems to lend some validity to the so-called Sephardic Jews. Now, I want to put another disclaimer out there. For the sake of this presentation, we all know that the word Jew is not an ancient construct. It's a modern construct. We know that that word evolved, especially through the English language, especially when you start understanding the Jutes, which is a Germanic group, the Jutes or the Jots, right? They refer to themselves as Jutes or Jutish, right? You have the Scythian Jutes that is connected to the Khazarians, that is connected to the Northmen, which is also referred to as the Vikings. So we already know, and I just want to make sure we understand, we know that that word Jew is not synonymous with the ancient Israelites. We know that initially the word that was used in the Wycliffe Bible in the 12th century, he used GYU, right? That's the first time you see it actually within the text, right? And so he used that word, right? And then by the time we get to the 17th century, that's where you see the introduction of the JEW. But by the time we get to the 18th century, that's where you start seeing all the political definitions associated with it. And by the time we get to 1948, the law returned, they solidified their agenda with the definition of that word. So I want to make sure we all are clear here. We know what the word means. We know what the word means, but I'm not going to get into that tonight just for the sake of the lesson and how so much we have to unpack. So we already know that word in itself. All right. So at first glance, this passage may seem to lend some validity to the so-called Sephardic Jews. However, I want to emphasize the phrase at first glance. Why? Because it appears to be biblical. It really appears to be biblical. But let me chip away at this construct here. Let's start with the Hebrew definition of the word Sepharad. Let's see what it means. It says here, Sepharad, a region of Assyria. Sepharad. But this is what really makes it triggers, right? The red flags, right? It sets off triggers. It sets off red flags when you see this entry right here. Entry 1, a place where Israelites were exiled, site unknown. So they don't know what this site is. Everything is based on speculations. So the site unknown. Let me say that again. The site, the location of the ancient Sepharad is unknown. So site unknown is a red flag. It's a major trigger. Okay. If the location of Sepharad is unknown, how did the Sephardic Jew label point to Spain? Does that make sense, everyone? Let me ask that question again. If the location of Sepharad is unknown, jury, how did the Sephardic Jew label point to Spain? Well, let's go to the etymology dictionary definition of this word, Sephardim. Let's see what it says. It says plural of Sephardi, but it says a Spanish or Portuguese Jew. It goes on to say, from modern Hebrew, Sephardim, it says Spaniards, Jews of Spain. Then it goes on and mentions Sepharad. Name of a country mentioned only in Obadiah, verse 20. Probably. That's the key. Probably. Probably. That's a red flag right there. See, when many see that word probably, you don't think about that word that's just basically an assumption. Probably. I'm sure you guys would not build or be secured if someone told you, if you asked the question, do we get paid this week? Probably. Right? Am I going to be able to let's just say, did I get the loan or whatever the case may be? Probably. You cannot base anything off of probably. You cannot base anything off of that. All right. And so that is a red flag. That is a red flag. So it says probably Asia Minor. You see how they come with these constructs here? Asia Minor. Asia Minor. Where's Asia Major? Right? Asia Minor. Come up with all kinds of constructs to get away from the original, like the term Middle East. A 1906 creation, which is really Northeast Africa. So again, it says here probably meaning Asia Minor. All right. But identified by the rabbis after the Targum Jonathan as Spain. So this is making it clear it was the rabbis, so to speak, the 1948ers. And when you look this up at the earliest, the 7th century, is where you see within this rabbinical document or literature is where they identified it with Spain. So in actuality, it was the Ashkenazis that created the Sephardics. They created that label. They created that construct. But we're not going to stop here. Let's continue. The Eastern Bible Dictionary definition of Sepharad. Let's see what it means. It says here, look at how it starts off. It makes reference to Obadiah 1:20, but then it says here, some locality unknown. So again, how did this word, this construct, get created during the Middle Ages? Because this 7th century, the 8th century, some estimated between the 7th to the 12th century is when they created this construct. It's not an antiquity, words of the antiquities. When I say the antiquities, the ancient times of when the ancient Israelites, when their identity was not hijacked. So they created this construct. That's why it says here, the modern Jews think that Spain is meant. Notice, let's say that again. Look at how it reads. The modern Jews think that Spain is meant. Notice what it says. The what? Modern Jews. This has nothing to do with the antiquities. When you start looking at the modern, now we're dealing with what? 7th century and forward to where we are. So it was a construct that they created. All right. So it says, and hence they designate the Spanish Jews, Sephardim, as they do the German Jews by the name Ashkenazim, because the rabbis called Germany Ashkenaz. All right. Which makes me think about Sister Carol's favorite buddy here. I haven't played her favorite buddy in a while, but let's see what he has to say about the word or the label Ashkenaz. Here's Sister Carol's favorite buddy right here.
Say where the name Ashkenazi came from. A little over 1,000 years ago. As Jewish people scattered around the world, had now immigrated in Europe, and now were living in the Rhineland in Germany. They looked at the name Gomer in Genesis 10, and they connected Gomer with Germany. So they took on the identity. It has nothing to do with Ashkenaz in the Bible, which is a descendant of Yafet. It's just a name. It's just a name. Okay, it's that simple. Okay, just like my last name Brown doesn't refer to the color of my skin. Just like my last name Brown doesn't refer to the color of my skin.
Just like my last name Brown doesn't refer to the color of my skin.
Michael Brown, I am Caucasian.
Just like my last name Brown doesn't refer to the color of my skin. Everything else it was shortened from a Russian name from my grandfather came over. My grandfather came over. Ellis Island, the name got shortened. A name. That's all it is. A name. So the idea that Ashkenazi Jews are descended from Yafet is a 100% false, zero truth. Just study the history.
All right, so he summed up. He's basically he is actually bringing or giving validity to this lesson tonight. Okay, so let's go ahead and continue. All right, we're not going to read all of this, but you guys get the gist. They don't know where this place is, and it's a modern construct. Sephardic Jews is a modern label. All right, so I'm going to use another source. Right, this is coming from another source here. The term Sephardic, as it is used in Israel by religious politicians, a terminology that has nothing to do with science. That quote is coming from The Origin of Ashkenazi Jewry, The Controversy Unraveled, Jit von Straten. So we're going to go to the section here. In this section, they're dealing with the Kohanim, just really exposing the flaws in that so-called Kohanim Habel, I would say model or whatever, that they put together, supposed to be a test genetically that they prove that they can determine who's the Levitical priest, which is an absolute lie. It's absolutely false. There's no priest gene, right? But anyway, but let's go here. Let's see what it says. We're not going to read all of it. We're just going to highlight what this source, and I encourage you guys, get this source. It shuts down every argument, DNA, you name it. It shuts it down. This book right here, this is like my handbook right here that I have for years, and those that have been following me know that I've been using this book for years on top of years. But anyway, we're going to highlight this section right here. We're just going to focus on the Sephardics. And look at what it says about the Sephardics. The populations studied are defined wrongly. The term Sephardic Jews being used from North African Jews. The Sephardic Jews are Jews whose ancestors were expelled from Spain in 1492. And we're going to give clarity because there's so much to unpack with just that phrase alone. Zusman Diskin suspects that the author or the authors use the term Sephardic as it is used in Israel by religious politicians, a terminology that has nothing to do with science. You see the theme here? The institution of race created by a Germanic guy, right? Who created this institution that has nothing to do with science. And now we hear, we read here inside this source here that term Sephardic is a political term. It has nothing to do with science. In other words, no genetics, no nothing. It's a political title. So these, again, my disclaimer, these are not rhetorical claims. They are conclusions drawn from documented sources, and they demand an honest accounting of history. I want to repeat that throughout this lesson here. Let's go to Africa and its Inhabitants, Volume 2 by Elise Reclus, or Reclus rather, page 410. All right. Look at what it says here, and make a note of this. This is the section that we're going to highlight here. This tribe right here, we're going to focus on, called the Mavumbas. A part of the local trade is in the hands of the Mavumbas, a people of grave and solemn aspect, with intelligent eyes, straight or aquiline nose, whose pronounced Semitic type has earned for them the Portuguese designation of Judeos Preton, or Black Jews. They may certainly be regarded as of Jewish origin if the statement be true that they are strict observers of the Shabbat. In other words, abstaining even from all conversations on that day. That's key right there. Make a note of that, family. Make a note of these sources here. I'm going to add some additional sources here, and you guys are going to see it here as we progress in this lesson. So the Mavumbas are mentioned on this map. Let's see where they are mentioned at. Let's go to the Lost Tribes, a myth, suggestions towards rewriting history. All right. And I want to encourage you guys, because I know a lot have used this as a source, but there's some flaws with this source, even with using the term myth. But let's go ahead and break this down, and I'm going to expose the flaw in this source here. All right. But as you see here, let me zoom it in. Let me zoom it in. You see Mavumbu. Right? This is the same people. Mavumbas, Mavumbu, Mavumba. All right. And you see in this particular map, you see a number of Israelite tribes are identified all through this map here, as you can see in the backdrop here. This is not the full map. I have it, but it's not on the screen here. All right. Let's go ahead and really focus on the Mavumbu. This is coming from this book on page 249. Look at what it says about the Mavumbu. I'm going to highlight this section here, but I want you to pay attention to what it says. And there's a lot of contradictions in what it says, right? So I want you to make a note of the initial source, which predates this source by 40 to 50 years. But look at the wording here. Now we return to the Negro Jews of Longo Coast and their possible derivation from the Negro Judaism. Now notice how it used the word Judaism. You didn't see the word Judaism in the previous source, and we're going to make a note of that, because this, when you see the word Judaism, it's connected to converts, because that's how you define, according to the law of return, a Jew is defined by someone who practices Judaism or born to a Jewish mother. So this gives the tone of converts. So the Negro Judaism of the Portuguese Jewish colony of São Tomé. That colony was planted by King John in 1484 and supplied with Negro women from Longo Coast. But another important fact is to be added. Gonzalez Perez reports that in 1492, the governor Alvaro de Camina took with him to São Tomé 2,000 Negro children of 7 years age and under, whom the king had allowed Castilian Jews to carry off. So you notice they didn't say Portuguese Jews, they said Castilian Jews. But they said Castilian Jews carried off these Negroes here. Now we need to identify who these Negroes are. But again, it goes on to say, this shows us Castilian Jews a few years before the establishment of the Inquisition in the Canaries engaged in the slave trade. So just this source alone showing you that the 1948ers participated in the slave trade and aiding the refugee co-religionists of Portugal. In other words, the leaders, the religious leaders, the Catholic Church, the Catholic Christian Church, the popes, the nobles. But with the initial facts before us, we recognize that a considerable free Negro Judaism was certain to develop at Sao Tome, and that mercantile colonies of these free Jewish Negroes were certain to spread for the adjacent coast. It is beside the mark of the mark to scrutinize each colony for traces of white blood. Right? This is another red flag that I'm going to highlight here. The point is of value as showing continual migration of nominally converted African people. Notice how they put that word convert. So Abbe Proyard was much interested by the fact that Negro parents occasionally had children that remained all their lives as white as Europeans. Oh, it's so much you can unpack in this. These always had blonde or red hair and beard with feeble sight. This is dealing with albinoism. That's all this is dealing with. Someone that has albinoism. But they try to classify it as Europeans. That's why you got to pay attention to the wording, family. These always had blonde or red hair and beard with feeble sight. That poor eyesight comes with the territory of albinism. They were accounted extraordinary or divine beings. That's a whole nother discussion. I suggest that you guys just look up albinos and how treatment of albinos in Africa. And the stuff that'll come back will really catch you by surprise. All right. But it says here, and were ranked above the native Mgangas or fetish priests. And that's the key right here. Fetish priests. All right. But it goes on to say, let me go back here. We may compare Winwood Reed's statement that he met Negroes in Guinea who called themselves Portuguese and boasted their Portuguese ancestry and scorned other Negroes around them, though indistinguishable. All right. So, you get the gist of it. So let's highlight the contradictions here. This is a good, yet it is a bad source that most use without actually recognizing the author's attempt to rewrite history. This author made attempts to rewrite history, starting with using Judaism. Let's expose it. So what's revealing is how the Lost Tribes, a myth, suggests towards rewriting Hebrew history, was first published in 1930 by Duke University Press. Subtly reframes what earlier cited sources already recorded about the Mavumbas. Didn't mention anything about Judaism or anything like that, but that's what this source attempts to do, rewrite history. Decades early, as we just highlighted, Elise Reclus, Africa and its Inhabitants, Volume 2, published in English in 1899 with some citations placing parts of the broader translation stream around 1893, documents that the Mavumbas as Judeos Pretos, in other words, Black Jews, and ties their identity to origin and covenant practice, stating that they were strict observers of the Shabbat, abstaining even from conversion on that day, or conversations, on that day, without any suggestions that they were converts to Judaism. That source made no mention of converts or conversions. But the Lost Tribe, right? The Lost Tribes injects missionary language, in other words, like Christianized and baptisms, and then uses Judaism in a way that carries a conversion overtone as if the identity was adopted through colonial contact. The practice stays consistent across the record, but within a 40 to 50 year window, the framing shifts, showing how quickly African Hebrews' identity could be relabeled, reinterpreted, and repackaged through a European lens. So the Lost Tribes, a myth, suggests towards rewriting history, Hebrew history, doesn't just discuss identity, it assigns hierarchy. It pushes Negroes into the 10 lost tribes category while using modern constructs like Ashkenazi and Sephardic to control the legitimacy and reserve the authoritative tribes, in other words, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, for those deemed acceptable. The result is a managed narrative where Negro Israelites can be acknowledged, but only in a diminished role, while priesthood, kingship, and covenant authority remain monopolized through modern labels. All right. Hope you guys catching this. All right. So let's go back to this. Let's go to another source, and you'll see some red flags here called the Black Jews, the religious challenge or political versus religion, page 231. Right. And this is the section I'm going to highlight here. And it reads, were there Black slaves who were Jewish through religion? So notice how it's painting things with conversion. Were there Black slaves who were Jewish through religion, or excuse me, let me read it again. Were there Black slaves who were Jewish through religion, who maintained their faith of their ancestors after they had been forcibly transported to America? Only through an analysis of the mythology of the Jewish African origins. See, you notice how they throw terms like mythology, myths, origins of the Black Hebrews, will this become clear. The following are the major sources that needs to be considered in such analysis as A, witnesses, tales of the explorers who mention the existence of communities of Black Jews on the African continent, and particularly in the areas where the slave ships picked up the Black slaves. Rites and customs, which have more or less explicit analogies with those of Judaism. The semantics and dialectology of some African societies reveal some features comparable with those of Judaism. The deductions and conclusions of anthropological and sociological work done in Africa. It is well known that 1,500 years before Islam, Judaism was present in Africa. That's another red flag that contradicts what they are trying to push or insinuate of our ancestors being converts. 1,500 years before Islam. So if you even think about Mansa Musa, he ruled in the 13th century. So even before that, he wasn't the one that brought Islam to the different parts of Africa. So this takes us all the way back to like the fourth, 400, 500 BCE. No earlier than that. But it could go as far back as 1,000 years BCE. This is where the contradictions, they expose themselves with their rhetoric. But let's continue. A chain of Jewish commercial towns stretched almost uninterrupted from Mauritania, or excuse me if I'm butchering the name, to India. St. Augustine learned Hebrew in Tazim, where there was a Judeo-Syrian colony which came from Cyrenaica. These groups went as far as Akkar in the southern Sahara, and according to the Chronicles of Sudan. All right. So here's the contradictions, right? This is a major contradiction right here. It is well known that 1,500 years before Islam, Judaism was present in Africa. Let's break this down. If it is well known, according to this author, that Judaism was present in Africa 1,500 years before Islam, you know, the religion, even though they were not practicing Judaism, but anyway, they were practicing culture. They was practicing obedience. They was practicing the law and the prophets. Again, culture laid out by way of the law and the prophets. Let's go ahead, right? Let's just go on the surface with this word Judaism. If it is well known, according to this author, that Judaism was present in Africa 1,500 years before Islam, then by basic chronology, Islam emerged in the 6th to 7th century. This places that presence deep in the antiquities, roughly 500 to 600 BCE, not a late or recent conversion phenomenon. So this takes it all the way back to the antiquities. Again, 500, 600 years BCE. Yet the author still frames Negro Israelites, or so-called Black Jews, as African groups who merely adopted Judaism, which is a narrative sleight of hands. The scripture warns about the sleight of hands. It only works if Africa is treated as separate from Israel, as if Israel is not in Northeast Africa. And if Judaism is treated as something that arrives later rather than covenant identity preserved across generations. In other words, the timeline they admit undermines their very agenda they push. Ancient presence does not support a conversion story. It supports continuity. Let me say that again. Ancient presence does not support a conversion story. It supports continuity. So again, they were not practicing Judaism. But even in that source, it says that 1,500 years prior, Torah was present in Africa. West Africa, if we want to be more specific, because this is what we're dealing with, West Africa. We have sources, we have proof that, you know, it's there, but they were not practicing Judaism. They were not practicing Christianity. They were not practicing Islam. Those are the religions that man made up. Abraham didn't create these religions. But anyway, let's continue. All right, let's continue. So if it was well known, according to this author, that Judaism was present in Africa 1,500 years before Islam, then by basic chronology, Islam emerging in the 6th to 7th century, this places that presence deep in antiquity, roughly 500 to 600 BCE. This is not dealing with the Egyptians during this timeline. I see someone posting something about the Egyptians. This is not the Egyptians is further back. But anyway, but still the point is made, roughly 500 to 600 BCE, not a late or recent conversion phenomenon that they want to push. So let's go to another source here. The Jews of Spain and Portugal and the Inquisition. Let's see what it says here, page 57. I'm looking at the time here. All right. This circumstance induced King John to hasten their departure from Portugal, for which purpose ships were duly provided according to the agreement. But such was the temper of the captains and sailors that they subjected the Jews to the hardest possible conditions. They plundered them for their goods and valuables, even to their very clothes, and landed them naked and bare of everything on barren points of the African coast, leaving them to die of starvation or to be sold into slavery to the Moors. Nor was this all. The king wrested from their parents all children between the ages of 3 and 10 of those Jewish immigrants who from poverty or otherwise had omitted to pay the capitation tax on entering or who were forced to remain in Portugal, and had them transported to the newly discovered island of St. Thomas, Sao Tome, right? This is not dealing with St. Thomas in the areas that you guys think, family. This is St. Thomas, that's West Africa, just below the Gold Coast, and we're going to show that here in a second. Let's go to another source. American being the latest and most accurate description of the New World. Listen what they say. Listen to how they really make it clear who these Jews that was sent off to slavery, that was banished. Let's see what it says. American being the latest and most accurate description of the New World, page 57. All right, this is a section I'm going to read here. The Portuguese that dwelt on this island informed the Netherlanders that few lived about 50 years there, yet withstanding the great gain tempted them to tarry, several of them having 200 or 300 Negroes who worked in the sugar mill. That John III, King of Portugal, sent a colony thither above 200 years before, whom though the wholesome air destroyed, yet the palace was not left desolate, for he sent new inhabitants who first settled in Guinea, next in Angola, and lastly on the island of St. Thomas, that they might be the better used to the air, that the said king sold all those Jews for slaves that refused to embrace the Roman religion and caused their children to be baptized. Who are they dealing with, family? They're not dealing with Caucasians here. You will never hear any of the 1948ers say that they were enslaved. Especially during this period, you will never hear the so-called Sephardics saying that they were enslaved during this time. But I can prove to you that the Sephardics enslaved us. Hey, I'm going to show you, I'm going to reveal to you, family, the truth about the Spanish Inquisition and the layers of deceptions that makes it that really have confused so many of you guys. All right. All right. So let's continue here. The Critical Review or Annals of Literature, Volume 5, 57, 1783, page 141. Let's see what it says here. King John II in 1492 expelled all the Jews to the island of St. Thomas, which had been discovered in 1471, and to other Portuguese settlements on the continent of Africa. And from these banished Jews, the Black Portuguese, as they are called, right? So these banished Jews are called what? Black Portuguese. Let me say that again. These banished Jews are called Black Portuguese, as they are called, and the Jews of Longo, who are despised even by the very Negroes, are descended. All right. By these colonists, St. Thomas soon became a considerable place of trade and valuable for its sugar plantations. 30 years after their settlements, no less than 156,000 arobes, in other words, 30 pounds weight each of sugar, were exported, and the engines of 60 sugar works turned by slaves. These Negroes, we're dealing with who? Negroes. These Portuguese, these Negroes during the Spanish Inquisition, we're dealing with Negro slaves. Negroes were purchased in Guinea, Congo, Manicongo, and the colonists had plantations furnished with from 153,000 Negro slaves. Portuguese slaves which were labeled Black Jews. Again, here's the disclaimer again. These are not rhetorical claims. They are conclusions drawn from documented sources, and they demand an honest accounting of history. So let's go to this map here that I shared with you guys. Spectacle of nature, or conversations concerning the particularities of natural history, volume 7, part 2, 1754. Now we're going to read about this map, and guess what? This is going to prove that well before Islam, that the Israelites traveled to West Africa. Let's prove it. In this 1754 map of Africa by Gabriel Ramirez, it covers the entire continent of Africa with adjacent parts of Europe and Arabia. The map identifies the biblical port of Ophir, associated with the legends of King Solomon. Ophir was said to be a kingdom of limitless wealth, from which Solomon collected the gold needed to construct the first temple of Jerusalem. The true location of Ophir is a matter of significant debate among biblical scholars and archaeologists. Africa, Ceylon, and Malay all being viable options. From the 16th century on, most per this map believe Ophir to be located either in or around the African kingdom of Monopatapa, the gold-rich kingdom, which includes parts of modern-day Mozambique and Zimbabwe. The map also identifies Tarshish and Tartesso in southern Spain, another kingdom from biblical legends from which Solomon was believed to have acquired ivory and other valuables, and also from which he initiated his mission to Ophir. And this talks about the boats, and we'll show you the boats here. A beautiful illustration of natives loading boats with shovels and other tools is included at the bottom of this map. So let's go to the map here. Let's go to the map. We're going to identify 3 critical details on this map, and let's identify it here. Right? Now, this is where, of course, they're going to make them more Europeans and all of this, but this is the picture on the map, right? But let's identify some critical points of this map, right? Let's start right here where you see Martilos Terios Hebreos, which translates, it reads, Sea of Tyrian Hebrews. So we see, according to this map, the travels. Hebrews traveled this, coming from Israel, coming from Northeast Africa. This is the route that they traveled. Here's Ophir right here. But notice it didn't stop. They didn't just stop at Ophir. They came all the way around. You see Tarsus right here, right? But nevertheless, they had a stop here at the Gold Coast. This is Sao Tome right here. And here is the Gold Coast. Yes, family, Hebrews traveled during Solomon's time to these areas. Trade routes. Using that gold to build what? The temple. That's what they won't tell you. When I say they, the 1948 is not going to share this history. 2 Chronicles chapter 8, verse 18. And Humron sent him by the hand of his servants ships, and his servants that had knowledge of the sea, and they went with the servants of Solomon to Ophir. And that's Sao Tome right there. The 3 points there. Let's go to 1 Kings chapter 9, verse 9 and 20, verse 27 and 28. It says here, it reads, and Hiram, and let me make this clear, I am not a Freemason. I was one many years ago. I denounced it many years ago. So please don't troll the comment section asking me questions about Freemasonry. I'm not active, haven't been active in a very, very long time. I walked away from it because of what I discovered about the doctrine, about this system itself. And no, I was not part of the Bole, the typical things that we tend to pull out. And so please, no, I denounced Freemasonry quite some time ago. And there is videos on that. I mean, quite a long time ago. And I've done videos on that. But anyway, and please, again, don't teach me about Freemasonry. I already know about Freemasonry. All right. Verse 27. And Hiram sent in the navy his servants, shipmen, and that had knowledge of the sea, which the servants of Solomon, and they came to Ophir and fetched from thence gold 420 talents and brought it to King Solomon. So you see how King Solomon, the Hebrews this is their trade route. They're going to purchase gold. They're acquiring gold so that way they can build the temple. They don't tell you about this history. They don't tell you about that history at all. Family, they don't tell you about this history. Why? The same ones that says identity doesn't matter or color doesn't matter. But yet, when it comes to people of color, they have a tendency to rewrite history or erase it altogether. Lastly, this island here, identified as Sao Tome, is also known as St. Thomas. Okay. But I want to highlight it here that, another portion of this Gold Coast, another area here that I want to make sure that you guys pay attention to, bring this to you guys' attention. And let's zoom it in. You see Wida or Wida, right? And you see this text here, which is a contradiction, right? Because they highlight here, I am credibly informed that a country about 100 leagues north of the coast of Guinea is inhabited by white men, or at least a different kind of people, from the blacks who wear clothes and have a use of letters, make silk, and that some of them keep the Christian Sabbath. There's so much to unpack there. But anyway, also you have Negro land, okay? Negro land. As Sister Carol shared last night, home of the blacks. All right, we'll deal with that another time. But let's continue. So the contradiction isn't that the Mavumbas changed their worship day. It's that the Europeans mislabeled what they were seeing. It's the Europeans trying to reclassify what they're doing, change the narrative. The 1710 Herman Mal map claims some inland West Africans kept the Christian Sabbath, but Elise Recluse is far more specific, describing that the Mavumbas as strict observers of the Sabbath or Shabbat, abstaining even from all conversations on that day, and noting that the Portuguese called them Judeus Pretos, in other words, Black Jews. Come on, family. That level of strict separation aligns with the seventh-day Shabbat pattern found in the law and the prophets, not modern day Sunday church culture. In other words, the practice remained the same, but the colonial narrative tried to reframe it as Christian to fit a European lens. So let's go back to Africa and its inhabitants. We're going to allow this source to define that word Wida or Wida. Let's see what it says. And family, let the sources speak for themselves. Let the sources speak for themselves. Page 267. Let's go back to the source here. Let's highlight here. Let's see how Africa and its inhabitants define that word that we saw there on the map in Guinea, the slave coast, the Gold Coast rather, Wida. Let's see what it says. East of Great Popo begins the Dahomey territory, guarded by the important town of Glewe, known to Europeans by various names of Faida, Hevida, Wida, Wida, Wida. The old writers called it Judah. Let me say that again. The old writers called it Judah. So Africa and its inhabitants, making it clear that the old writers called it Judah. This is not something that was done by error. And its inhabitants were said to be who? Jews. While the neighboring river Alala, whose real name is Ephra, became the Euphrates. Come on, family. You're not going to buy sneakers, right? You don't go to the supermarket to buy sneakers. Now, back in the day, right? If you grew up in New York, New Jersey area, you remember ShopRite. That's a different story. My grandmother, I ain't going to get into all that. But my point that I'm making, for the most part, you don't go to Foot Locker looking to buy fish. You're not going to name a fish store Foot Locker. That's the point that I want to make. But anyway, according to this source, right, Wida is Judah. That is not my interpretation. Let me say that again, because people will come at you as if we are making up these interpretations. This is not my interpretation. According to this source, Wida is Judah. That is not our interpretation. This coming directly from this source here. But we're not going to stop there. I'm going to show you, right? I'm going to add to what we taught on yesterday, right? Because that is the testimony of earlier writers preserved in a documented historical work. And this isn't an isolated reference. Let me say that again. This is not an isolated reference. I decided to add an additional reference here, an additional source, right? There are multiple maps and sources that confirm the Hebrew identification of this territory and preserve its original name before later revisions and omissions. Well, let's pull up this map here. 1742 Covens and Mortier map of West Africa, Guinea, Benin, Morocco, Tripoli. We're going to highlight this area right here, family. Now look at this here. Right? That's the section we're highlighting. Can you guys see that? I want you to pay attention to this arrow here. Right? And I'm going to zoom in. And if you guys can see exactly what it says, type it in the screen. Type exactly what you see here inside the chat. What does this map say? What does it call this territory? And how is it spelled? Type it inside the chat and we give some shout outs here. Let's see here. Ernest Parker said it says Kingdom of Judah, but Judah, I got you. All right. Appreciate the post. Anyone else? What does it say? Right here where that arrow is. Let's see here. Shout outs to Sister Yvette. She said Judah. Shout outs to Reggie. I am King Henderson, Judah. Let's see here. Who else? And Focus to see Judah. Brian Scholar, Judah. Let's see here. Anyone else? Georgetta, Judah. You guys see it? Anyone else? Let's see here. Okay, someone typed a Yada. You're close. Yahawada, right, in ancient Hebrew, right? Yada, right, means to know or knew. All right, you're almost there, but yeah, I see what I know you made an error there. You typed a Yada. Appreciate you. All right, redeemed, Judah, right? Lisa Gibson, Judah. So far, you guys are the jury, right? Broski, Judah. Let's get some additional ones here. Ernest Parker again, Judah. Adwold, excuse me if I mispronounce your name, but Judah. Jaime, Judah. All right, let's see here. Actria, Judah. Big sis up in the building, Sister Carol, Judah. Yashral, Judah. Sister Joy, Judah. All right, jury, you guys are on it. Garrinch, excuse me if I mispronounce your name, Judah. All right. The fall of Babylon, Judah. You guys got it? Laugh, live, laugh, love, loveness. Excuse me. Live, laugh, loveness, Judah. All right. Sunny lion, Judah. So everyone unanimously, Judah. We agree that it's Judah. And that's what it says, Judah. That's what it says. So let me zoom it out. All right. On this 1742 Covens and Mortier map, the coastal area, the highlighted area, and the Bight of Benin, right? The Slave Coast region is clearly labeled Judah, which is often shown on older European maps and around the same zone as Wida or Ouida. Come on, family. We got plenty of sources. We have plenty of sources. But you'll hear them tell you this, you know, when you corner them, when they don't have nothing else to say, right? When you know that they cannot respond, you give them all the proof. This is what you're going to hear.
It just doesn't matter. 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 It just doesn't matter.
That's right. That's what you're going to hear, family. Don't let them pull on your arm. Do not let them pull on your arm. Right? Do not join their rallies. Let them rally among themselves. All right? Let Drewski get to them. Okay? But anyway, this matters because it demonstrates that European cartographers preserved a naming tradition where Wida or Ouida was associated with Judah in print, not just in oral claims or modern speculations. So let's transition because we're still dealing with Spain and Portugal, right? So what did Shakespeare, right? We're still dealing with Spain and Portugal because I'm going to use this to really drive home the Spanish Inquisition. We're going to use Shakespeare to expose the Spanish Inquisition and the agendas associated with it to erase and rewrite history and hijack an identity that did not belong to them. So what did Shakespeare, his contemporaries, and historians of their time say about the Israelites? Let's see what they say. How did they describe them? How did they describe them? What caused the shift? When did the shift occur? Let's start with Atlas, Geographus, or a complete system of geography, ancient and modern, for Africa. Let's start here, volume 4, page 38. Let's see what it says. Man, there's so much to unpack here, but I'm gonna explain this. You know, like I said, I went back over it earlier today, and I spent most of the day just adding additional notes here, so that way I could properly explain it to you guys. So that way, when you guys go back and listen to it again, you'll be able to take clips of this, and you'll be able to, you know, really sit down and just take it all in and explain it to others as you teaching them this history. So the present Christians in Africa are partly strangers and partly natives. Some of them slaves to the Turks. Let me read that again. The present Christians in Africa are partly strangers and partly natives. Some of them slaves to the Turks and barbarians, and others free. Some of the Jews who inhabit both sides of the Niger derive themselves from Abraham. See, these are dealing with Negroes. Look at the wording, though. These are dealing with Negroes. Others fled hither from Aphia when Vespasian destroyed Jerusalem, or from Judea when 'twas wafted by the Romans, Persians, Saracens, and Christians. Some were banished from Italy. Look at what it says here, family. This is important. Some were banished from Italy in 1342. We're dealing with Africa, right? We're not dealing with the 1948ers. We're not dealing with those that hijacked out our identity from that created these labels. Some were banished from Italy in 1342, from Spain in 1462, from the Low Countries in 1350, from France in 1403, and from England in 1422. These all differ in habit and are divided into several wealthy and numerous tribes, but have no dominion, are despised of all nations, and so abominated by the Turks that they are not admitted to be Mohammedans unless first baptized. Come on, man. Come on, family. Algeria. What's his name? I Show Speed or whatever his name is. I think that's his name. He learned a lesson. He went to Algeria. It's dominated by Turks. He had to deal with racism in Algeria. He had to deal with, when he went to Egypt, they was giving him all kinds of lies about the noses of the different statues there. He had to deal with certain types of prejudices when he was in Egypt, when he was in Algeria, because guess what? Those areas are dominated by Turks, Arabs, who are what? Descendants from Turks, not the ancient Arabs. We're talking about the modern Arabs by way of the multiple Arab invasions, the Ottoman Empire, as far as their invasions. So it says here, so abominated by the Turks that they are not admitted to be Mohammedans unless first baptized, and then made use of only to receive their customs and gather in their taxes. So this quote is important, family, because even though the author uses the latter religious label Judaism, the statement itself admits something modern scholars often try to deny, that African history contains deep antiquity connections to the law of Moses and the prophets. And what I mean by that, because I know we have certain people within the camps, certain people in this awakening, that they have taken on a lot of this spirit, a lot of this approach from these religious systems. So when you say Africa, automatically they cringe. It's like a form of racism. Oh, come on. Let me connect my computer here. My laptop about to go dead. I forgot to. Whew. Man, glad I saw that. My laptop was about to go dead on me, family. But anyway, they've taken on these arguments and kind of taken on this prejudice overtone of, if you say Africa, it's like it's the biggest insult. No, we're not African. Wait a minute. Israel is in Africa. You don't have a problem with saying you're in New York, or you're a New Yorker. You don't have to have a problem to say that you're from Brick City. You don't have a problem with using these constructs, but when you put out the word Africa, oh no, we're not Africa. No, Israel is in Africa. No, Africa is Hamitic. It's Ham. Wait a minute. But Africa, Africa, according to many of the historians during Josephus' time, Africa comes from Abraham's sons by way of Keturah, Aphir. It's a Shemitic word. And even if it wasn't, so what? Anyway, let me leave that alone, family. I'm getting a little passionate there. All right. Let me read this again. This quote is important because even though the author uses the latter religious label Judaism, the statement itself admits something modern scholars often try to deny, that African, in other words, Negro history contains deep antiquity connections to the law of Moses and the prophets, meaning Israelite covenant culture was not developed, covenant culture was not foreign to Africa or a late development. Let me say that again. Let me say that part again. Meaning Israelite covenant culture was not foreign to Africa or a late development. All right. So this directly strengthens why the Wida or Wida region being recorded as Judah on older West African maps matter, because it shows European records preserved an association between the coastal territory and Judah, not merely as a modern or recent claim, but as something printed and circulated in official geography and cartography. In plain terms, the map label Judah aligns with the broader historical memory that ancient Israelites identified identity markers existed in Africa. Let me read that again. In plain terms, the map labeled Judah aligns with the broader historical memory that ancient Israelite identity markers existed in Africa, and later narratives try to reframe that continuity as conversion instead of inheritance. So let's go back here. Some were banished from Italy in 1342, Spain 1462, and the Low Countries 1350, from France 1403, and from England in 1422. That's a quote coming from the Atlas Geographics. So this quote should be not treated as neutral religious disputes, but as a deliberate pattern of targeted removal, because the people being referenced and pushed out were the Negroes. It's us, the Negro Israelites, who were increasingly stigmatized, criminalized, and marked for displacement. So banishment functioned as an organized weapon. It scattered families, destabilized communities, stripped people of protection and property, and made their identities, our identity, easier to erase or reassign it to others. That's the playbook we continue to be up under, happening in New York right now. So even more revealing is that European converts often assisted in enforcing these expulsions. Let me say that again. European converts, those that hold these titles that I just read to you earlier, these 1948ers that's holding on to these titles, whether it's Sephardic Jews or what's the other one? Ashkenazi Jews and some of the other ones that we mentioned. Even though, right, even more revealing is that that European converts, these converts often assisted in enforcing these expulsions, because once Israelite identity was reduced to a controllable region, their true heirs could be recast as outsiders, while converts positioned themselves as the authorized representatives. Does that make sense, everyone? Let me say that again. Even more revealing is that European converts often assisted in enforcing these expulsions, because once Israelite identity was reduced to a controllable region, the true heirs could be recast as outsiders, while converts positioned themselves as the authorized representatives. In that light, these expulsions are not merely dates on a timeline. They are evidence of a long-running agenda of exclusions and replacement, where removal of Negro Israelites created the conditions for theft of legitimacy, influence, and inheritance. So, are there any proof Negro Israelites were in Spain and Portugal? I already gave you the proof. I gave you at least 4 sources. But we're going to take it a step further, because we're going to let these people, the Shakespeare, his comrades, all of them back during that time, or his contemporaries, we're going to see how they described the Israelites in Spain and Portugal. We already touched on that, but let me give you some additional sources. All right. Let's start with Memoirs of the Secret Service by John Mackey, Esquire. He's a lawyer. Look at what he says here. Daniel, right? Earl of Nottingham, Secretary of State. Look at how he describes him, right? And I want you to pay attention to his word selection. All right. So again, Daniel, Earl of Nottingham, Secretary of State, Court of Great Britain. When we go on page 26, this is the area I want to highlight, right? It says he has also the exterior heir of, I can't see that. It looks like it's cut off there. So I'm not going to read that because that's cut off. These words are cut off right here. But the point that I want to make here says Look at how it describes him. In his habit and manners, very formal, a tall, thin, very black man, like a Spaniard or Jew. Let me say that again. So this high-ranking official is described as a tall, thin, very black man, like a Spaniard or a Jew, about 50 years old. So here it is, this source here by a high-ranking person. This is a lawyer right here, making it clear the Spanish in that area were very black. The Jews in that area, very black. All right, let's continue. Let's continue. So Mackey doesn't say tan, he doesn't say swarthy or dark. He says a tall, thin, very black man. So this is an unambiguous complexion description. Like a Spaniard or Jew proves the comparison being used in that time period, excuse me. Again, like a Spaniard or Jew proves the comparisons being used in that time period. Spaniard and Jew were common references or reference points for a very dark complexion. The comparison assumes the reader already understood that Spaniards and Jews were often described as very dark or very black. Okay. That's a duplicate slide. So this exposes the modern rewrite. Today, Jew is treated as a white phenotype. So modern narratives often treat ancient Israelites and their descendants during this time, right, so-called Jews, appearances as European white, in other words, Ashkenazi default, Middle Eastern, in other words, olive at most, but never very black. That's what you see with the Sephardics. That's what you see with as far as how they try to describe the ancient Israelites. This 1773 quote proves that in English discourse, Jew can be used as, my mouse is acting up, a complexion comparison, a visible type descriptor, a category of dark appearance. So the modern so-called white Jew default is not timeless, but it's a later social construction. Let me say that again. The modern so-called white Jew default is not timeless, but it's a later social construction. This quote proves that in the 1700s, Jews were not a protected European whiteness category. It was commonly associated with darkness, to the point where an author could call a man very black and say he looked like a Spaniard or Jew without being called anti-Semitic, right? All right, so let's go to this source here. I want to just make this quote here, and we're gonna do some more comparison here. This the Jews of southern Spain and compare them with those of Holland and northern Germany to perceive a very striking difference. The Spanish Jews is always dark complexion, and his hair is uniformly black. So this is so important. So that way you guys can see how the Spanish Jews are being described, right? Let me read this again. The Jews of southern Spain and compare them with those of Holland and northern Germany to perceive a very striking difference. In other words, saying that these Spanish Jews, these people in Spain and Portugal, they are different from the so-called Jews in Germany, the so-called Jews in Holland. The Spanish Jews is always, it didn't say possibly any other color. It says the Spanish Jews is always dark complexion and his hair is uniformly black. Well, this is the source here, right? A treatise on physical geography. All right. It reads, the argument from intermixture is further rebutted by historic knowledge. Let me say that again. Right. The argument from mixture is further rebutted by historic knowledge. Thus, the Jews are a people who have ever, according to the prophecy, dwelt alone without intermixing with the nations to this day. Now, this separate race, all descended from brown ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, must have been as dark as Mar Yohanan, if not darker. Exhibit every shade of color from the black Jews of Malabar, of whom we have such an interesting account by Dr. Claudius Buchanan, to the rose and lily complexion of the Jewesses on the banks of Elbe. We need to go no further than the Jews of southern Spain. This is key. Look at how they describe the Jews of southern Spain, still dealing with Spain, right? Spain and Portugal, the consistency here, and compare them with those of Holland and northern Germany to perceive a very striking difference. The Spanish Jews is always dark complexion. Y'all see that? It says the Spanish Jews is what? Always dark complexioned. And his hair is uniformly black. Let me say that again. The Spanish Jews is always dark complexioned, and his hair is uniformly black. It did not say Middle Eastern. It did not say Arabic. It did not say olive in terms of the unripe olive. It did not say Mediterranean. It said the Spanish Jews, and this is comparing them to the Holland and Germany Jews, right? The Spanish Jews is always dark complexion, and his hair is uniformly black, whilst the German Jews is often as fair as any German. In other words, look just like all the Germans around him, look like all the people around him, the local people, has light or red hair with blue eyes. That's converts. The various shades of color observable among the Negro or African race tends to the same conclusion. Along the coast of Guinea, so now it's comparing the Spanish Israelites to Guinea, the West Coast, the very place that many of them were scattered to. Along the coast of Guinea, which is low, marshy, and hot, we find jet black complexions, and this is the very country from which American Negroes have been derived. Come on, family, making a connection to us with who? I want to say the Israelites from Spain and Portugal, to the very territory that they were banished to. But when we come to the elevated regions of the exterior or pass into southern Africa, we find the very same race of various shades of brown, from a dead mahogany to a light copper. All right. So let's go ahead and break this down. Right. In the source of Atlas, it says here, some were banished dealing with when we're dealing with Jews, some Jews were banished to Italy, Spain, right? And it says Low Countries from France, from England. It gives some dates: 1342, 1462, 1350, 1403, and 1422. But look at this here. Are there any proof Negro Israelites were in Italy, France, and England? And I'm going to drop the link here if Berean Scholar is still there, and Sister Carol, as I get to a key piece of information here. If you guys want to jump on, feel free to do so. But let me just do this real quick. Look at here. I'm going to answer this question here. Look at what it says here. The accumulated experience over 100 years of travel, trade, and conquest had convinced Europeans that some of the accepted stereotypes of Jewish racial otherness, including the beliefs that Jews were black, needed to be qualified. When William Breton, and I have his writings here, jotted down his impressions of the Jews in the synagogue of Amsterdam in 1635, he noted that the Jewish men are most black, right? That's synonymous to saying very black. and insatiably given unto women, drawing here on contemporary prejudices linking blackness and lasciviousness. And when the Scottish minister Robert Kirk toured London in January 1990, in other words, almost 60 years later, he went to this same synagogue. He also paid a visit to this synagogue there, where he observed over 200 Jews worshiping. He noted in his journal that they were all very black and distinct in their reasonings as gypsies. All right. But of course, then you had someone by the name of Maximilian, that's this portion right here, who tried to come up with a contradiction, which they did. It says here, a vulgar error that the Jews are black, saying, hey, that's an error, saying that the Jews are all black, rather. A vulgar error that the Jews are all black. The mission observes is only true of the Portuguese Jew, who marrying always among one another beget children like themselves. So here it is, Spain and Portugal. Here's the commonality, the common thread. Spain and Portugal, Portuguese Israelites, they are always referred to as being what? Very dark. They are always referred to as being dark people who have not married or went outside of their community, as it says here, who marrying always among one another beget children like themselves. Consequently, the swarthiness of their complexion is entailed upon the whole race, even in the northern region. But the Jews who are originally of Germany, look at how it's saying, giving you the distinction. This is now dealing with converts, Jews who are originally of Germany. Those, for example, I have seen at Prague are not blacker than the rest of their countrymen. Oh, man. Come on, family. So James Shapiro's Shakespeare and the Jews preserves exactly what later narratives try to bury. Early modern Europeans repeatedly described Israelites, especially Portuguese and Spanish communities, as black, not as some modern white construct. Right? Shapiro documents eyewitness accounts like William Breton's 1635 visit to Amsterdam synagogue, where he wrote, the Jewish men are very black, are most black. And Scottish minister Robert Kirk, 1690, observed in London that they were all very black men, even as these writers layered racist stereotypes onto their descriptions. Made it clear that they are what? Very black. So what becomes most revealing is the later qualifications of Francois Maximilian missions, A New Voyage to Italy, which calls it a vulgar error that all Jews are black, yet immediately clarifies that it is true of the Portuguese Jews because marrying always among one another, they beget children like themselves. And the swarthiness of complexion is entailed upon their whole race, even in northern regions. So in the same breath, the text separates Jews originally from Germany as not being blacker than the surrounding countrymen, which exposes the label which being applied to different streams of people, while the Iberian Israelites maintained a consistent identity through the endogamy, confirming my point about that the Israelites, Spain and Portugal, here we go. Hit the button. Yeah, I was getting excited. That's the Israelites of Spain and Portugal were recognized as black and distinct, and that German Jews reflect a separate historical development. All right. So again, the Portuguese Jews who marrying always among one another begat children like themselves. Consequently, swarthiness of their complexion is entailed upon their whole race. That's what Shapiro wrote. Look at what he says here, right? Well, actually, this is a definition of swarthy, just getting into that a little bit. It means dark color, especially of skin, right? Dark colored, tawny, right? We'll see these descriptions when we deal with the antiquity gems and rings. When we deal with Cleopatra, she's described as being a negresses, right? Extremely fruitful in the hands of Negroes and also Negresses, the latter often in the character of Cleopatra, holding her breast apps, right? So she is being referred to as being a Negro. She is being referred to as being a Negresses. That's the female name for a Negro. And even in Shakespeare's play, when it comes to Cleopatra, Antony and Cleopatra, he uses this very description of her upon a tawny front. So she's described as being tawny, right? And when we go to the notes of this play, this is what it gives. This is the definition of that, the play, of the word inside the play notes. Tawny front, dark countenance. Cleopatra was a Greek, but she is usually represented as a darker skinned. Come on, family. Even Shakespeare. Why is Shakespeare describing, whenever he deals with someone during the antiquities, even during his time, he referred to them as being darker skinned? Why? He's during that time that we're highlighting, the 16th, 17th century, right? So let's confirm this with the actual source, right? Travels of Holland, the United Province, England, Scotland, and Ireland. Let's see what he says. There are men most black, in other words, very black, full of hair, and insatiably given unto women. Their wives restrained and made prisoners, their widows distinguished from all other women, Jews by white veils hanging to their backs. They will not bury among Gentiles. So it's making it clear that the Israelites are very black. So this source is not a modern internet talk or a late intervention. It's an earlier 17th century English traveler documenting Israelites in Amsterdam, where it's recognized as black, and that they maintained separation customs that match covenant culture, not simply a genetic, or should I say, generic religion. All right. So let's look at the descriptions of the Israelites in England. Right. Let me drop this link here. I don't want to keep them up too late if they're, and my apologies, guys. I was going on a roll and I almost forgot about you guys. If you guys still want to jump on, feel free to do so. My apologies. I'm just, going through the lesson, getting as much as I can. All right. Look at this here, family. Dealing with England, right? Unlike missions through Manasseh assumes that the Portuguese Jews are white, raising predictable questions of what constitutes blackness. The Merchant of Venice provides another instance of this identification of Jews with blackness and naming Shylock's countrymen Tubal and Chus, the latter biblical names, immediately recognizable to Elizabethan audiences as progenitor of all blacks. They tried to change the narrative. This person is, trying to. Anyway, I'm not going to explain it yet. I'll explain it here in a second. The most rigorous English challenge to the position that the Jewish nation was biologically distinct appears in Thomas Brown's consideration of whether Jews stink naturally, and his pseudodoxia. All right. So let me just, I'm gonna just get this point out here, and I'm gonna bring the guys on, and we'll continue here. But nevertheless, if they intermarried and mixed with other peoples, how could Paul's prediction in Romans about the future calling of the Jews ever be realized? This is a question that Shapiro raised in his book, right? And this is what he says about that. Although the Jews were a race, they were an exceptional one, insofar as they reputedly could never commingle with others. After all, if they intermarried and mixed with other peoples, how could Paul's prediction in Romans about the future calling of the Jews ever be realized? Some writers pointed to the Jews' dark or black skin color as a marker of their racial difference. In addition, as members of a religious community from which the founders of the church had emerged, Jews were at once the opposite of Christians and at the same time potential Christians. From a Christian perspective, the only thing that stood in the way of their conversions. All right. So I'm gonna bring Sister Carol and Berean Scholar in here, and then we'll continue here, family. We got a few things that I want to continue to cover that we didn't cover last night. Now we're getting beyond where we were last night. Let me bring them on, and then we're going to continue here as I bring some additional sources here versus what we covered last night. I want to say peace and blessings, starting with you, Sister Carol, followed by Berean Scholar. Peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings, my brother. Excuse me. Excuse me, coughing.
You all right, sis? Got some water?
Yeah, I'm getting some now.
Okay. All right, Berean Scholar, you in the building?
Peace and blessing, brother. How you doing, man? You are building this house. I mean, you got it all squared out. All the facts that we need to say this is a done deal.
Absolutely, 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 absolutely. We laying it out, man, and that's the whole goal with this lesson, just to really use it from a perspective of those that really want to use this as a source. All right.
And you asked me about the that website at the front of the broadcast. They repost that website. I think Berkeley did the whole website again, so I put that link in the chat so that anybody want to go to that website. Origin of Race.
Okay.
Audrey got a name.
Smedley.
Yeah, it's Berkeley reposted that website.
Okay. Hey, I appreciate it. I see someone in the back. I'm gonna bring you out here real quick. I'm not taking any additional discussions. I'm keeping it real simple because I want to get to this information. That's why I kind of brought in Sister Carol and Berean Scholar late, because there's a lot of information, and I know if I bring others in outside of them, it's gonna cause me not to be able to get to all what I want to get to. So real quick, Yeshaya Hoffer, you still there? All right, they look like they're having connection issues. All right, I'm going to go ahead and drop you here. All right. So yeah. All right, Sister Carol, you good with your connection?
Yes.
I mean,
I'm
your
good.
voice rather.
Yes.
You're right tonight.
For the moment.
Okay. All right. Well, guys, I'm gonna keep going, and you guys know how we do, because I'm trying to get to a certain place here. Some of the information that I didn't have a chance to share last night. So feel free to chime in whenever you guys have something to say. All right.
Yes, sir. Keep going.
All right. So picking up where we left off here, family. So James Shapiro's Shakespeare and the Jews reveals how early modern Europeans framed Israelites through overlapping categories of nationality, race, and belief, while still treating them, let me stretch my screen out, while still treating them as a uniquely distinct people whose identity could not be dissolved through mixture. All right. He then highlights a key contradiction. Israelites were considered a race, yet an exceptional one, because they were believed incapable of commingling with other peoples. All right. I'm hearing a little echo here. I'm gonna just mute you guys out real quick here because I'm hearing a little echo here. All right, and you guys can unmute yourself if you guys want to say anything. Let me say this again. Shapiro then highlights a key contradiction. Israelites were considered a race, yet an exceptional one, because they were believed incapable of commingling with other peoples. Since intermarriage would undermine Paul's prediction in Romans about their future calling, right? Within that framework, right, some writers pointed to dark or black skin as a marker of Israelite racial differences. In other words, to make sure that there's a distinction, that Israel they do not get lost, They made sure the distinction of them being black doesn't get lost among all those white folks, so to speak. That's basically what the point that I'm making here, right? And that's what Shapiro was making inside his writings that we read from, showing that physical appearance was repeatedly used as an identifier, not just theology. For those that want to say color doesn't matter, well, during that time, the distinction that they made, they used skin complexion to distinguish from these Israelites versus those that was converting over to our identity, to make a distinction between the German Jews, the distinction from the Jews of Holland. They made sure you understood that the Jews, or the original Israelites from Spain and Portugal, held on the distinction of the skin complexion of the ancient Israelites, according to Paul's prophecy, and that they did not mingle outside of their community. That's what they're saying. And he's not teaching replacement theology like many would teach Paul, a replacement theology. They teach Paul like he's teaching replacement. But anyway, how did others during Shakespeare's time describe the Israelites? Well, let's go back here, right? This is a quote from the book, and I'm telling you, family, get this book that I am coming out of, because there's so many good references you could go to and pull out. And that's what I normally do when I'm vetting books. I go to the sources that they're making reference to see if they're properly representing it. And oftentimes you'll find more in those sources than what they've highlighted in their books. Because oftentimes they may just highlight one book and one sentence from that book, but it's a treasure trove of information there. All right, Yeshaya, I'm not going to bring you on. We'll do this next weekend. I'll open it up to everyone, but I'm not going to bring you on because I don't want to lose my place, and I don't want to miss information that I want to share with the people. So I'm not going to bring you on tonight, but I really appreciate you. We'll do this next weekend. We'll have it open up for everyone else. All right. But nevertheless, this is what he says. I knew you to be a Jew, for you Jews have a peculiar color, a face different from the form and figure of other men, which thing hath often filled me with admiration, for you are black and uncomely, and not white as other men. Wait a minute. You see what it's saying? This is 1655, saying that the Israelites of that time in this same area, Spain and Portugal, saying that they're what? Black and what? Uncomely. Well, let's go to the source that Shapiro is quoting from, right? This is a good source right here, but I'm going to take you to the actual source. The Global Consequences of Mistransliterations or translations, the adoption of the black but, right? Because we hear that right now. Well, they may be black, or I may concede this, but even right now, even among this awakening, you hear that but among some of our brothers and sisters. Well, it's good that you're Israelites, but you still need Jesus. Like, we don't know that we still need to Yahweh Shai. Like, we don't understand what salvation is. Like, we don't know. Like, we're just focusing on one thing. They always got to put a but at the sentence. We don't need no buts. You know what I mean? We already know this. But they always got to put a but to try to throw shade. Anyway, let me read this here, and I get to the main source here. It says, the King James Version is hailed as a landmark composition in the English language and was extraordinarily influential. Its effect on the language can be observed in a multitude of other texts. For example, the English translation of Songs of Songs or Songs of Solomon 1 and 5 resurfaces in an obviously related but upside down form in the English translation by Paul Isaiah of Sebastian Munster's work, The Messiah of the Christians and the Jews, 1655, a disputation of a Christian with an obstinate Jew. The Christian says, for you Jews have a peculiar color of face, different from the form and figure of other men. Now, Solomon Songs of Solomon 1 and 5, that's where you get that term black and beautiful. Because King Solomon's wife says, I'm black and what? Beautiful, attractive. When you look at the transliteration of that, right? The proper context of the text. But it says here, for you are Jews have a peculiar color of face, different from the form and figure of other men. For you are black and uncomely and not white as other men. But I had to go to the source. You know, I had to go to the original source. And here's the original source. Paul Isaiah, actual translation of Sebastian Munster, Messiah's Christian Norm et Judaeorum. I know I'm butchering it, but anyway, I didn't put my accents to it, but anyway. But look at what he says. And I'm just going to highlight this section right here. And I can just read it right here. It says, I am not a Jew, neither. Actually, let me go up here because this is a discussion, right? The Jew says this, right? The Israelite says this, and God save you. How know you me to be a Jew, that you speak so in Hebrew with me? Art thou a Jew and one of our people? The Christian, I am not a Jew, neither of thy people, neither am I acquainted with you, but from the form of your face, I knew you to be a Jew. So here it is, a Christian, a Caucasian, saying to a Negro, looking at them and say, I know you're an Israelite. It goes on to say, for you Jews have a peculiar color of face, different from the form and figure of other men, which thing hath often filled me with admiration. For you are black and uncomely, and not white as other men. Right? That's what this screenshot right here says here. That's what this says right here. And I'll just zoom right here in this portion right here so you guys can see it if it's large enough for you guys. All right. Can you guys see that, Sister Carol, Marine Scholar?
Yes.
All right.
I see that mic drop.
All right. Now let me put my pointer up so that way you guys, those that are watching, can follow it as well. All right. Now I'm gonna zoom it in again. All right. If I can get my mouse to cooperate. All right. All right. So you guys see that, right? That you the guys, the jurors that's in the chat. All right. My Zoom is acting up, but you see right here, for you are black and uncomely and not white. Plenty of sources, family. Plenty of sources. I'll move the mouse out the way for those that want to take a screenshot of this. Do so. Take a screenshot. I got plenty of sources. I'm just not putting, I don't have them all in this particular presentation because we'll be here for quite some time, but there's plenty of sources out there. But I'm just showing you guys how to build up your I would say your library is pay attention to the sources that you're reading from. As far as the books that you may be reading, look at the sources that they make reference to, right? If you're, for example, you have a source from Wikipedia, I don't pay attention to the Wikipedia writings. I just go to the references and I'll see what sources are being cited. Then I go to those sources and vet those sources. But anyway, let's continue. Right? So again, for you are black and uncomely and not white as other men. So this source directly reinforces what later writers try to blur out. In other words, Israelites were often recognized in early modern discourse, not merely by religion, but by visible identity. But they'll call it today skin doctrine. Oh, come on, family. We're knocking it down. In the dialogue, the speaker asks, how is he to be a Jew? But, and replied, and the reply is blunt. He is known from the form of his face because he is described as black and uncomely, not white as other men. Right? So this statement aligns with the wider record we've documented, such as travel accounts, geography texts, Shapiro citations, showing that Europeans repeatedly associated Israelites, especially those connected to the Iberian streams, such as Spain and Portugal, with blackness as a defining marker, undermining the modern conversion narrative that treats Negro Israelites as late adopters of someone else's culture. This is our culture. Come on, family. We dropping it here, right? We dropping it here. Look at this key point right here. Before I continue, Berean scholar, Sister Carol.
Yes, sir.
Any comments real quick before we continue?
Keep on going, brother. It speaks for itself.
Yes. Keep going.
All right, all right. You know how we do. Anytime you guys want to jump in, let me know. So contemporary scholars have traced the origins of modern racism and nationalism back to the 16th century, a time where European nations were coming into contact on an unprecedented scale with other peoples. Indeed, they are quick to point that the word themselves, right, race as well as nation, only began to acquire their current meanings at this time. Much of this research is flawed, however, by its secular bias. It has been remarkably slow to acknowledge the extent to which the theology shaped the way people thought about both racial and national difference in early modern times. As a result, this scholarship has necessarily ignored the place of the Jew in the formation of early modern European ideas about race and nation, despite the fact that so much theorizing about these topics in the 16th and 17th centuries was produced in response to the theoretical problems posed by the Jews. Man, he dropped it right here. Let's break this down, but I want to reiterate this quote. For Shakespeare contemporaries, Jews were not identified by their religion alone, but by national and racial affiliations as well. So James Shapiro, Shakespeare and the Jews, exposes a major weakness in much modern scholarship on racism and nationalism by showing that it often begins with a secular assumption that blinds its true engine behind early European racial thinking. In other words, theology. They always got to start off right on the racist national talk. And then they go into the theology, right? They want to make sure, hey, you know what? It doesn't matter what color Christ is. It doesn't matter if you're Israelite, it doesn't matter Greek nor Jew, all this other stuff. They always do that before they actually go into answering the discussion. Then they go into what? Theology, their man-made doctrines. All right. Well, let's break this down more. While contemporary scholars correctly trace the emergence of modern race and nation categories to the 16th century, an era intensified European contact with other people, Shapiro argues that their research becomes flawed when it ignores how deeply religious doctrine shaped the way Europeans define differences or difference in the first place. It's all about religion. It's all about religion. It's all about religion. Oh man, we're knocking this stuff down, family. Because of this bias, scholars have been slow to acknowledge that the figure of the Jews was central to early modern European theorizing about race and nation, even though many of the key arguments and classifications produced in the 16th and 17th centuries were crafted specifically in response to the problem the Jews posed for European identity. So Shapiro confirms that race thinking was not merely politics or economics, but it was theological first. He's blaming what? The church. He's blaming Christianity. He's blaming Catholicism. He's blaming Islam. He's blaming Judaism of being the issues of what we see today. And only later became secularized and institutionalized, right? So Great Britain, and let me go back here because I was going to deal with Great Britain. I'm going to deal with it in a second. Let me go back here just to make sure you guys understand this here. Let me read this one more time so you guys understand. This is what he's saying here. He's telling you that it was religion that created these racial divides. It was religion that redefined who the true ancient Israelites are. It's religion. And they are all in what? Cahoots with one another. Judaism is in cahoots with Christianity. Christianity is in cahoots with Islam. They all are what? In cahoots with one another. They are the crafty council. So contemporary scholars have traced the origins of modern racism and nationalism back to the 16th century, a time where European nations were coming into contact on an unprecedented scale with other peoples. Indeed, they are quick to point that the words themselves, in other words, race as well as nation, only began to acquire their current meaning at this time. Much of this research is flawed. However, by its secular bias, it has been remarkably slow to acknowledge the extent to which theology shaped the way people thought about both racial and national difference in early modern times. You see, he's saying this, the issue is with theology. It's with these, and theology is nothing more than a glorified term by saying that's synonymous with saying Christian philosophies, Catholic philosophies, Islamic philosophies. That's all. It's just a Judaic or rabbinic. You hear the term rabbinical philosophy. That's all it is. The word Sephardic comes from rabbinical philosophies. All right. So I wanted to make sure you guys understand that point. That's why I wanted to bring this go right back here so you guys can understand exactly what he's saying here. All right. So let's fast forward here. Right. Great Britain had a plan to manipulate Negro Israelites to adopt their doctrine. This is coming from repeal of the Jews naturalization bill. Right. They had a plan, and part of that plan, and I'll just paraphrase it, I'll read some of it here, is to have our people that was enslaved, right? They'll select them to try to mix with their people. Remember, we were all about staying true to our people, but they came up with a plan. Let's get the men to marry white women and get the white the sisters to marry white men, so that way that'll be their way of holding on more to their the Brits or whoever enslaved us. You know, we'll hold on to their nationality, sort of like the issue that Nehemiah had to address in Nehemiah 13. Because the Israelite men was mixing and meshing with other nations, and their own children couldn't understand their original language. But I'll read it real quick. It says, as to the first of these two rules, I am sure it stands in need of no illustration. But as to the second, I shall suppose that for strengthening our sugar colonies and for peopling them with subjects instead of slaves, a scheme were proposed for naturalizing all the blacks born in any of them without any other condition whatsoever. I will say that our adopting such a scheme would be ridiculous because of their progeny would always continue to be a distinct people. See, the proposal was, let's get them mixing. But the thing that brought laughter, they said, hey, no matter what, we could mix, but we're still going to hold on to what? Key features. It's not going to completely what? Wipe us out. Remember, that's the Babylonian system. By what? Mixing and meshing. That's the word Babal means confusion by mixing. But it goes on to say, I would say that our adopting such a scheme, right? And part of this, the 1948 is a part of the scheme. They run the sugar plantations. They're part of the scheme on what? Further erasing our identity. I would say that our adopting such a scheme would be ridiculous because their progeny would always continue to be a distinct people. But if the conditions were added that no such blacks should be naturalized unless they declare themselves Christians, and that no such black man should be naturalized unless he marry a white woman, nor any black woman unless she married a white man. Doesn't it sound similar to what we see with Judaism, right? You see in Christianity, they were saying, hey, make these slaves convert over to, give up their belief system. This is still part of the Spanish continuation of the Spanish Inquisition, as far as some of the tenets there, even though this is 1753, but you still saw the tenets still exist. Unless he married a white woman, nor any black woman, unless she married a white man, the ridicule of the scheme would be very much softened because their progeny would in time unite and coalesce with the rest of the people. It might a little alter the complexion of the people of these islands, but they would all become the same people and would look upon themselves in no other light other than subjects of Great Britain. This is part of the problem you see, for example, in what's that Dominican Republic, because many of them don't want to mix with someone that look like them. They want to mix with Caucasians. They want to mix with white people. Even when they come to this country, they don't want to identify with, if we want to say Afro, right? They don't want to identify with that. Many of them don't want to identify with their African roots, or should I say, many of them are connected to Israel. I'm not saying all of them, but this is the scheme right here, and we have examples of the results of this. So it says this must shew the imprudence and even the ridiculousness of our adopting the doctrine that all Jews born here to be deemed natural born subjects for their latest posterity, whilst they continue, Jews will. So when it went on with some additional information there. All right. So last point I want to make, right, before we touch on another key thing, close out the Spanish Inquisition with this, right? You see here, this is the map of India. Just going back to the source here, as I highlighted, the lost tribe, a myth suggests towards rewriting history, Hebrew history. This map right here, now many would just focus on Africa, but when you go through that book, this is another good book, good map here, because it identifies Israel, Israelites that migrated, that fled, many of them fled over to India. Right? You see here, B'nai Israel, Black Jews. Let me zoom that in so that way you guys can see this. All right, let me zoom it in. Come on, mouse. There we go. All right, you see that? It says Supara, Sophir, Ophir, 1000 BC. You see B'nai Israel, Black Jews, right? You see some of the different ones here. You see Black Jews here, but then when you deal with the Cochin, right? This is where you really get into the Caucasians, right? These guys came there during the Spanish Inquisition, chasing after our people, pretty much. Created a caste system. Our people were there, in the 4th century, 5th century. It's documented as early as the 2nd and 3rd century. But the Caucasians, so-called Jews, and we're Israelites, the so-called Jews arrived there during the Inquisition, and they brought this caste system there. But let me give you sources here. All right. This is coming from Encyclopedia of Diaspora, Yale University, right? This is the source right here. And look at what it says. I'm just going to read this section here. The B'nai Israel may have arrived in the 5th or 6th century from Persia or the Middle East, joined by the Jews who had come from Iberia after the exile. When the Portuguese Inquisition came to India, right? Now we're dealing with what? The Portuguese Spanish Inquisition. It says it came to India, right? They fled south to establish a new settlement. So guess what? Now you see these Caucasians show up in the 16th century. You're talking 1,000 years later. They show up and look at what they do. They bring the sword. Doesn't that tie into the prophecy that the sword going to be following Judah? Right? It's going to follow Israel no matter where we are. They brought that sword to India. Look at here. In the 16th century and built a paradisi synagogue. And they called the white Jews Cochin, while the original group who had darker skin were called black Jews. They brought the institution of race there. They made it about racial divide. To what? Further what? Push their agenda. Look at what it says here. A favorable Dutch presence in Cochin soon brought more Jewish merchants. So now they flatten it with Caucasians. Now they flatten it with Jewish merchants enslaving people. And settlers, and some moved north again. Non-Jews called them Saturday oil pressers. So now they're mocking the Negroes, calling them names. Deuteronomy 28. Because many made coconut oil, low caste rolls, right? So they brought the caste system there, except on Shabbat. As in Cochin, white B'nai Israelites or Israel distinguished themselves from black ones, imitating the Hindu caste system. Come on, family. You can't make this up. And then when you go to the footnotes of this, right, explaining, giving you more clarity here, right, Paul Berman writes that it was sometimes believed that Palestinian skin tone was darker than that of the Israeli Jews, as if in pigmental confirmation of the proposed new link between Palestinians and African Americans. So the Palestinians they're referring to are the Afro-Palestinians. Oh, come on, family. Let me stop right here because I'm about to drop another bomb right here with Shakespeare. We got a little time left here. Berean Scholar, Sister Carol, any comments?
I just want to make a point of saying nobody has connected the dots of what's going on. All this was happening during the so-called slave trade war. All this was going on during slavery. So they knew the people who they had taking them in these ships all over the Western Hemisphere. He showed you in every documentation what they thought about us, who we were. Are they changing our names, changing how we looked, trying to remove us by mixing with us? This was all going on during slavery. So when someone tells you that slavery did not exist, it did not come over in these ships, it was already here, blah, 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 here's your evidence. You saw the dates. He told you 1600 and something, 1700 and something. And all this documentation, these old books. It proves the point. When someone comes to you and saying that nobody came over here in these ships, there's no ships. It's the same merchant ships. It wasn't the special slave ships. There were merchant ships, pirate ships.
Exactly.
So let's get that foolishness out the brain now tonight. That this was going on. This was the slaving system that these 1948ers was involved in. That they financed with their own money to do so.
Exactly.
That Queen I forgot her name, Isabel, gave them an edict and money to do so and continue it.
Exactly.
So there's your evidence. The Spanish Inquisition kicked it off, and they continued it throughout all the Western Hemisphere.
And see,
Not
to
o-
your point, oh, go ahead, Sister Carol. I
no,
thought
go
you was
ahead.
finished.
Go ahead.
And to your point, many think that when we deal with the transatlantic world war, we're just dealing with that triangle portion there.
Right.
You have the India slave trade
That's right. I
that
was going to say that.
connects to it, right? But even then, it was initially connected to the so-called Arabic slave trade.
Arab,
that
exactly.
predates it,
That's right.
right? And see, I didn't put it in here because I didn't want to go too far with it, but India was at one time called East Ethiopia.
Correct. Correct.
Right? For those that may not understand this, India was at one time called East Ethiopia. That's why you
Right.
see
So many dark.
many of our people going over to that area.
That's right.
So
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
part, and actually I had it in the original presentation. I had some of the 1948 merchants here, but just for the sake of time, I removed it from here to show that, hey, they and the source that I'm sharing it about the lost tribes, that's from a 1948er.
Mm-hmm.
So when you see mercantile, as Sister Carol pointed out, you're dealing with merchants, and they dominated the merchants.
Correct.
Don't get caught up in when they say, hey, it's only a fraction of them compared to those that own slaves. No,
Yeah.
they controlled the merchants.
All of it.
They're the manufacturers, so to speak, if you want to look at the manufacturers versus those that are purchasing cars. But
Yes.
anyway, any other comments, Marine Scholar?
I would
And
ask
Sister
you,
Carol?
Pastor, to restate your disclaimer you said beforehand. This is not just speculation.
Yeah, let me bring that disclaimer up here. I think I forgot to put it in. And I didn't say it in a little bit. Thanks you for.
Because guys who are hearing us, listen to this. This is not speculation. You've heard evidence, resource after resource after resource, dated. These things are documented. And it pointed out to the mere fact that the people who control what we say the scholarly sources are the people who are forming their stories and their version of the truth. They're the one who's forming the theological institution, the universities that came up later in Europe. Because now the first university was in Africa, but the ones that came up later in Europe to control the narrative that they can put another person in our place. Identity theft. You found it yet, Pastor?
Oh yeah. I put up. Thank you for reminding me before we get into Shakespeare, because family, I did all of that, right, to lay the foundation on Shakespeare, because Shapiro's works deals with how Shakespeare and his contemporaries viewed us, the actual Israelites. Now we're going to see what Shakespeare says about himself. We didn't learn this in school. So these are not rhetorical claims. They are conclusions drawn from documented sources, and they demand an honest accounting of history. Let me say that again. These are not rhetorical claims. They are conclusions drawn from documented sources, and they demand an honest accounting of history.
Yes.
All right, family, we're gonna close out with a bang. We're gonna close out with some histories that some of you guys may not know, but we're gonna give you clarity, starting with the man of the hour, Shakespeare. Let's see what Shakespeare says about himself. Right? Is this picture that you see here an accurate description of Shakespeare? Right? This is what this picture that if you Googled, you'll see this picture for the most part. Is this an accurate depiction of Shakespeare? All right, you're the jury. You're the jury, family. All right, you guys gonna have to vote Is this an accurate depiction of, again, of Shakespeare? That's a duplicate slide. How did Shakespeare describe himself? Let's go to the autobiography of Shakespeare, a fragmented by Alexander Lewis Charles in 1839, right? He from 1839 to 1913. But let's see what he says about this. Let's see what is documented about Shakespeare, because this is stuff they don't want you to hear, right? They don't want you to know this type of information. They'll try to demonize the author. They tried to demonize this person here, but they couldn't stop the work. But anyway, Shakespeare describes his father and his grandfather's appearance. Look at this. On page 19 and 20. I remember my father, Richard Shakespeare of Warwick. He was a small, dark man and had a large head and very little hands and feet. Being as to that, like my grandfather, Thomas of Utrecht, as I was often told. So he describes himself as being basically short, dark man. So Shakespeare describes his brother's appearance. Look at what he says. He loved us, my younger brother, John and me, but he often seemed as if we were not living or loving him, though at times he would play with us and tell us stories and sing to us and buy us sweetmeats and toys. I was but a little boy, but I mind me well of him and of his fantastic way of curling his mustachios and beard, which were dark and shining, as were his fine large eyes, very unlike the hue and complexion of Shakespeare's of Warwick in Stratford on Avon, and of other parts, whom I did after years meet, which were light and somewhat inclined to auburn or red. Now we got to break that down, family, because Shakespeare, if you pay attention to what he said all the other Shakespeares were dark. He said, look at what he said here. His brother said his hue was different from what? The complexion of the Shakespeares of Warwick in Stratford Avon. Shakespeare is describing himself as being what? Dark. He's black. So he's saying all the Shakespeares are what? Dark. They're dark. They're black. But now he describes his brother as being auburn. Now we gotta break down auburn so you guys can put this in proper context. That's auburn. But auburn comes in what? Different shades. Even though the majority of us can be very dark, but guess what? Overall, we come in what? Different shades. And family, I don't want to use that term red bone, because that in itself is a deception, right? Because when many of you guys, especially when you deal with David, many of you guys will say, hey, you know what? David had to look like Malcolm X. I have on the screen the different shades of auburn. So auburn, like again, during that time, the Israelites were what? Very dark. Ready. So his brother could have been very easily one of these shades here. That's what I want to make sure you guys understand. Let's let go of some of the things that we have brought over to this to understanding the scriptures, especially the term red bone, right? We in our community, red bone equated to being light skinned.
Pastor, that SWAT you have up too also match the definition of ruddy.
Well, you in my bag, man. You're in my bag. You're in my bag. Because guess what? I'm glad you mentioned that, because guess what? Here it is. Auburn, the definition of auburn, right? And again, this is why you got to be careful of these definitions, these dictionaries, because they change. Look at what it says here. Whitish yellow, yellowish white, flaxen color. Come on, family. But then it says here, the meaning shifted 16th century to reddish brown. You see how they tried to reverse it here? trying to say originally auburn meant white, but then it reversed to being basically dark, black. You see, man, come on, family. This stuff is so easy to call out. So when you see brun, in other words, brown, but anyway, so Shakespeare said his brother's skin complexion was lighter than his. So that means that Shakespeare had to be what? Just like most of the Israelites, as we share with all of the sources, they were what? Very black, very dark people. But look at this here. Shakespeare describes his brother's skin complexion as auburn, which would be synonymous to the biblical ruddy, as Berean scholar just pointed out. That's why I say he was in the bag. He was in my shepherd's bag. I'm missing one of my stones. All right. So what is the biblical definition of ruddy? In family, we got to let go of these teachings that started with the Europeans. With Esau, they'll teach you Esau was a white person. But then they teach Jacob is a white person. Anyway, so look at this. What is the biblical definition of ruddy? This is why I say the biblical definition. This is coming from the International Standard Bible Encyclopedia 1915. Ruddy. Ruddy is the form taken by the adjective red when used as a term of praise of the human skin. And this is its use in the Bible. The Hebrew and the Greek words are all usual words for red or to be red. The dark-skinned Hebrews found great beauty in a clear complexion. And let me just zoom in so you can see the actual screenshot here, so no one can think that I modified and manipulated what it says. Look at what it says here. Ruddy is the form taken by the adjective red when used as a term of praise of the human skin. And this is its use in the Bible. Hebrew, Greek words are all usually words for red or to be red. The dark-skinned Hebrews found great beauty in a clear complexion. Come on, family. What color is a ruddy cow? It's brown, but it's a dark brown. How now, brown cow. Oh, you got me going leaders of the old school here now, right? But anyway, the dark-skinned Hebrews found great beauty in a clear complexion. So what made Esau stand out? Right before we describe David here, what made Esau stand out, they placed the point of emphasis on him being hairy. But ruddy also means healthy skin, and we have a scholar here. This is her area. Sister Carol will tell you and can describe to you what it means to have that definition marked on when you're at the hospital or when the baby is born, or what they the word that they use for their skin Sister Carol, can you just help us out for a second here? Break that down.
Yes, when you have a physical exam, a history and physical, basically the history is going over your past of things that happened to you and your family history. When they look at your body, the physical part of it, they're looking at your skin and looking at your hair, your eyes, the physicality of your body. So when they describe your skin, it'll say it's ruddy, meaning that it's healthy, that it's has a reddish tone of the fleshiness of it, that is healthy. That's what the word ruddy means.
Thank you, Sister Carol. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you, Sister Carol. Thank you very much. So, family, you heard it from the expert here, right? I don't even need to, because usually I'll go into that definition. We got the expert here. There's no need of me pulling that out. All right. So she hit it right on the nail. So let's look at some of the sources here, because we're going to deal with David real quick, and we'll get back to Shakespeare, because David is described as being comely and dark, right? This is 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 12. Look at how it starts off with. This is the KJV translation. Now he was ruddy and withal of a beautiful countenance. Adamawana or Adama, right? This is dealing with ruddy, right? So that's this translation. But let's look at another translation. This is the ISV. So he sent and brought him. He had a dark, healthy complexion with beautiful eyes, and he was handsome. Okay. All right. 2 or 3 witnesses, right? NHEB Bible. Now he sent and brought him in, and he was reddish brown and had beautiful eyes and was handsome. Okay. We sourced up, right? Berean Scholar said, bring another one. The NLT Bible. So Jesse sent for him. He was dark and handsome with beautiful eyes. Come on, family. I'm just giving you sources. I'm not even giving you, this is nothing. This is not an opinionated presentation. I'm giving you sources, jurors, so that way you make a decision. So Shakespeare describes his appearance and ethnicity. Look at here. Look at what he says here. He says here, and Will Shakespeare, that I was a small, dark man with great eyes, whom the women loved, not a little, but who loved them not too much, and who was not seldom called the little Jew boy, or the little Jew from Midland County, which made me to fume with anger. So he's being called a dark Jew. He described himself as being dark, but he's being called an Israelite. He's saying he was unaware that he was an Israelite. But look at here. He says here, for I knew not then, as I did afterwards, that my grandfather Thomas, the little of Utrecht in Holland, had been born a what? Jew, an Israelite. But you know, today they'll say, hey, he wasn't one because identity is recognized through the mother. But he's making it clear that is what? His grandfather is an Israelite. That makes him what? An Israelite. That makes his father an Israelite. He was an Israelite. Looking like you and I. And guess what? Shakespeare inherited the bloodline of King David. But he also inherited what? His poetic gifts. Come on, family. You know we the people of the book. King David, according to the scriptures, is known as the sweetest musician, the sweetest songwriter, the sweetest psalmist. Look at this here. 2 Samuel 23:1. Look at what it says about David. Now these be the last words of David, son of Jesse, said, and the man who was raised up on high, the anointed of Elohim of Jacob, and the sweet psalmist of Israel. Doesn't that sound like one of the terms we use right now? Man, that was sweet, man. Your Berean Scholar was sweet, man. Yeah, he dropped that one. He did that thing, man. He was sweet. Doesn't that sound the same? Isn't that some of the jargon we use? It says David was the sweet psalmist of Israel. Berean Scholar, you gonna say something?
My people, that's my people.
Come on, family. Come on, family. We got one more example we're going to show here. One more example here, right? All right, let's fast forward here. Let's deal with this one last person right here. The dark lady. See, Shakespeare had Israelites scattered all through his material. Come on, family. Who was Shakespeare's dark lady? This is gonna be the last person because this is still dealing with that time during, when we start looking at Spain and Portugal. Emilia Bassano, also known as Emilia Lanier, was a pioneering English poet, one of the first women in England to publish a book of poetry under her own name. Born in 1569 to a family of Venetian Jews origin, she was a Jewish origin. She was part of the Bassano family, a notable group of musicians and instrument makers in Elizabethan England. Her family worked as court musicians, which may have given her exposure to the cultural and intellectual circles of the time, right? And let's go to a key point. I don't want to read all this. I'll just get straight to the key points. Let me see here. let's get to the key point here. Look at here. It says, thus it was that around that time, at the age of 66, Lord Hudson acquired a dark-skinned 13-year-old mistress, Amelia Bassano. Brilliant musical, multilingual, and highly ambitious poet, she would live with him for the next 10 years, during which time he would love her and treat her well. So Bassano's heritage and appearance, often described as dark or swarthy, described her within Elizabethan society and possibly influenced her connection to the mysterious dark lady in Shakespeare's sonnets. This part of her history highlights the complex intersections of race, gender, and power dynamics in Renaissance England, especially for women of color who moved in elite circles. All right, let's see what it say about her ethnicity. But look at what's key here. Clearly, the Bassanos didn't just say her. Clearly, the Bassanos were perceived as black, most likely because of their Moorish ancestry and the relative darkness of their skin. If they had been suspected of being Jews, this would, of course, have only accentuated their perception that they were dark, as Tudor Parfit has shown in his recent book, Black Jews, right, in Africa and the Americas. So Renaissance Christians viewed Jews as dark, akin to Moors. Come on, family. So this is giving you a barometer. When you see dark, they're not just saying dark skin, because they'll try to say, well, people of color is still dark skin. No, they're saying as the Moors, as what? Really chocolate, pretty much. Further, some Jews themselves adopted the same viewpoint. Isaac ben Judah Abernel even explained their swarthiness as part of a divine punishment, right? Trying to push the curse of Ham on these Negroes here. You see how they took the religion, like we talked about earlier, taking theology, taking religious warped understanding of the text and want to use it as pull that racial agenda. Tried to say their dark skin was because of a divine punishment. Punishment of what? She's gifted. The whole family was gifted musicians. While others claimed the lackness of ruddiness in their faces was the results due to Jewish law. So now this is where they redefine ruddiness as being what? White. Right? A lack of red menstrual blood at the moment of conception, all kinds of crazy stuff. So while Amelia was clearly a Bassano, a foreigner, the Willoughbys, were the cadet branch of the Tudors, and Lord Hudson was the son of Henry VIII and one of the most powerful members of the Tudor dynasty. So it goes on to say here, right? Let me see if I'll put another portion of here and we'll wrap it up right here. Look at right here. Mic drop right here. It says here, other peoples, to her annoyance, criticized her spelling, but look at here. So was it that in late 16th century London, to have any involvement in playwriting, one would have to be a countess or a duchess. But here's the kicker. A small, dark-skinned Jewish girl from a family of Italian court musicians would have seemed to have no chance at all in this venture. So it's making it clear that she's what? An Israelite. Look at here. It was also the hometown of a remarkable dynasty of Jewish musicians who were well known as the Pivas. Oh, come on, family. Let's stop right there. Let's stop right there. All right. Let's stop right there. Come on, family. All right. Berean Scholar, Sister Carol, you guys got the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, after all that mountain of evidence, it is clear that our people has been identified as dark-skinned Hebrews, dark-skinned Israelites. It's clear. And why all this lies and mountain of lies from theology and universities to try to combat that, we're trying to play, even creating the study of Egyptology to change and whitewash everything. You can't get rid of all this written down evidence.
Absolutely, absolutely, Sister Carol, and I'm typing up a poll here.
As I just stated, the sources are there. I know someone's asking a question about, do you have a list of sources that you can download? The sources is he showed you on screen in the PowerPoint, the name of the books, the pages they're on, this information is on. You will have to go back through the PowerPoint and look at the information to get the books. There's books out there on the Spanish Inquisition. You just have to understand who they're talking about now.
Exactly.
One particular book, I'm trying to remember the name of it right now. It goes in great detail about this information. I can't think of the name of it, but even if you go into the AI, they will pull it up for you. You have to know how to ask for it because the domains are out there. The domains pull this old information out. You just have to know how to request what you want for it to pull it. But it goes and finds it because it fed all this information to it. This should let you understand why they want to destroy our history and do not want us to know it. This is why they're going through trying to get rid of much information they possibly can because they know we are digging this information out.
Yes.
So this should be incumbent upon you to go find it. You can do the exactly same thing with Pastor Kelly Richardson just did. He went and he researched it. Anyone can research it.
Sister, I mean, Pastor Kelly did the work for us.
Exactly.
I mean, all you have to do is go back, rewind the video, stop, write down the sources, look them up for yourself. Exactly. I have a doc in my computer of sources that I got from Pastor Kelly's video, but Naira video, it gives you many sources. You got to. And
I have purchased books that he has identified. Since I've known him, I've created my own collection of books based upon what he showed you in his videos and in his PowerPoints. I stopped the video, do a screenshot so I can keep it for later so I can go find the book. Some things you got to do on your own. The stuff he's giving us, he should be charging us for.
Amen. Amen.
This is a lecture class that most institutions, well, not most, all institutions would charge you a tuition fee to take the course. And he's doing it free here on YouTube, which I told him to come over here and teach this to you. Because he wasn't going to do it. He was on Facebook. I told him to move this platform over to YouTube so you can get more of an audience of people.
Facebook.
Oh, the book, as we call it. Okay. So he left the book and came to the tube. So go back through this PowerPoint and just do screenshots of where he showed you these books and this literature before it's snatched up.
Yes. Yes.
But again, this is slavery. This is our slavery history. And if you go to slavevoyages.org, I think it's the name, but I can't remember. I think it's slavevoyages.org. you will see the administration of the logs of our people and where they're located, where they embarked and disembarked. And it has their Hebrew names. Remember, we weren't supposed to see any of this. We weren't supposed to learn English. We weren't supposed to read it, any of that, because we already had our own language. We were already intelligent people. We were teachers. We were physicians. We were agriculturists. We brought all these skills with us. So why do you think they brought us here? Because we already had that skill set. They didn't teach us how to farm land and build buildings. We were already masons. A builder is what a mason is. A brick person. We already knew how to do all that kind of stuff.
And let me say this too, because I see some questions here about can I teach how to find this info? I'll just say it's, and I shared it here even earlier in the lesson. You just have to change your approach. You know, you have to utilize let's just say if you Google something, and you go to, let's just say if Wikipedia comes up, go to the references. Just like if you're reading the book, let's just say if you picked up Benaya's book, he give you references, he give you sources, but the key is you have to invest in it. A lot of this information you're not going to be able to get for free. And I spent a lot of money. You know what I mean? My methodology, part of it was, hey, I needed access to those libraries because I understood that, there's certain libraries you cannot have access to unless you take certain classes. And I'm referring to the libraries of those Ivy League schools.
Yes.
Because some of the books that I got, some of the sources I received came directly from there. So you have to be, willing to invest in it, quite honestly. Just like if you was investing in your skill set at your place of employment, you have to stay up to speed with your certifications and everything. You have to take that same approach. So, and invest the time, because some of these things are just not going to come and happen in a quick, fast, in a hurry. And also, I just have to say, and I'm not saying this from being conceited or anything like that, I have a gift for information.
Yes, he does.
Because it's one thing to have the information, but how do you connect the dots? And I believe that's the gift that the Most High has always given me, is how to look at code, how to look at information, how to look at data, how to find the hacks. Because some of the things that the Most High has allowed me to do, remember with the pews, Sister Carol, people couldn't even hack or figure out what was on the pews.
Correct.
But I invested going down on a regular basis and doing a lot of research and sitting on classes and lectures that I just don't talk about. So I would just say the basics is, the biggest thing is when you just like Sister Carol pointed out in Berean Scholar, when I present sources, just take those sources and write it down. Like I just gave a nugget, like this source right here, this Shakespeare Dark Lady, take that source and write it down. Because it has references there. Now, for me, when I saw that I already have Tudor Parfit's books and stuff, but if you read it and they make reference to Tudor Parfit, guess what you do? Let's go to Tudor Parfit. Let's see what he has to say. That's how you start that momentum.
That's doing research pages. It's like you do research papers.
Exactly.
Did it in high school.
Exactly.
And guys, this is prophecies. This is prophecy being fulfilled. The book of Daniel, chapter 12. These words were shut up. This books were sealed until the end times, and people were running to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. It's increasing so we can be awakened in the lands of our captivity, so we'll know who we are. These breadcrumbs was left for us to find.
Someone said that the research you had to learn from the basics. Well, you learn your basics in high school. You was in English. Your English teacher told you to write the paper. You had to go to the library, do a bibliography. Oh, your
Well,
resources, the
quite
books.
honestly, things are changing now. Though a lot of way they are training people up, it changed a lot.
Oh yeah,
it
So,
changed tremendously.
right.
We had the benefits of they taught you how to write notes,
Yep.
and so even if you didn't have a book, you knew how to write notes, right? And you could go back over and review your notes, but I would just say again, family, just keep it simple. But the key is you have to invest in it. I can't make it any plainer. Again, every last one of us, whether you have your own business, if you have your own business in certain areas, you have to have certain certifications to
Mm-hmm.
say that you're skilled in that area, right? If you say you have an automotive uh, business, and I come there, and I don't see no type of certifications, I'm not letting you work on my car.
Yep.
So you have to have those certifications. So likewise, you just have to, do the same. Make it a point that even certain information that you feel like you already know, go back over it. I mean, I'm a pastor. Hey, I had to tear down all the stuff that I was accustomed to and what I thought I knew and started over with Genesis and just kept studying it. And what you hear is just the results of me constantly doing exactly what Joshua was told to do. Meditate on the word night and day. So it's not hard. It's just that you have to have a willing heart and willing to sacrifice time. Like we're doing right now. Every last one of us could be asleep right now.
Correct.
Which that proves that that proves that the Ruach called you, each and every one of you who are listening right now, and those of you might be listening on the recording, to be a scholar of His Word. Put in the work, become a watcher that you can wake up our people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just like being a pastor. Not everyone is called to be a pastor.
Exactly.
And being a pastor is not what people what is the hierarchical that has been made out to be today, right? You have pastors that function within ministries, multiple pastors. But I'm just saying not everyone is called to do certain things, even though you have the ability to do certain things, doesn't mean that you have the calling or the temperament to do certain things. So don't let people pump you up. But I would just say not everyone has to, and I'm going to make it clear, not everyone has the skill set of just being in analytics. Sister Carol got the medical stuff down, right? She go in, when her and I talk, she bring up stuff, even from a perspective of vitamins and everything.
Mm.
And I try to make it seem like I know what I'm talking about. But guess what? I concede. It's like, okay. You know what I mean? She's the expert. Brian Scholar, he's an expert with what he do with counseling and all those things. But what would I look like trying to tell them what to do? Each one of us have a gift in an area that we function, but the key is when we all bring it together, that's where the increase comes.
Yes. One body working together. You can start preaching now. I'm gonna have to get the organ out.
So yeah, family. But again, family, think about it. I'm going to say this. Let me show my screen here. Now, this is where you have a desire for information, right? And I'm going to use this as an example, right? Because I believe that I always pay attention to what people share, right? Candace Owens in the video that I shared, not Candace Owens, a video that I shared with the rabbi with the tunnel thing. Remember the tunnels?
Yes.
He mentioned the Tibetan book on living and dying.
Yeah.
When he mentioned that, I was like, you know what? Let me purchase it so I could read it to see exactly what he was referring to and how that impacts their belief system. That's what I'm saying, family. It doesn't matter whether you like the person or not. If they share some good information or some information that you may not be familiar with, it's nothing wrong with what?
Looking
it up. Hey, you know what? Let me look at that book. Anyway, I just thought I'd use that as an example, of what to do, your approach should be, Again, I believe too, you have to be wired a certain way too.
Yes.
All right. You have to be wired a certain way. But again, if you really have that desire, as Sister Carol Berean Scholar pointed out, we've been sharing sources, this been the method of showing the sources. That's why I changed my approach even with giving sermons. Like, you know what? I'm not doing that sermon stuff anymore from what I was taught. You know what? I'm going to show my notes to everyone. You're going to see my notes. These PowerPoints is pretty much my notes. Because if I was putting my sermon together, I have my sources, then I start by the time I get to the night before, I'm reducing my sources down, but I have my notes there just in case if I need to make a reference to a source. But guess what? I'm like, instead of doing that, I'm just going to let you guys see it. So that way I don't have to explain the sources.
Correct.
And that's where somebody can leave learning something and you just don't get off on a tangent trying to be eloquent in your delivery.
Exactly. I like I said, I could preach, but I ain't doing that stuff anymore. I want to do exactly what the Messiah did, his approach. So I'm saying this, family, when you see these stuff on the screen, this information on the screen, whether you listen to Berean Scholar, because he does the same thing, take screenshots, write it down. Right? Let's get away from the some of the bad behaviors or habits that we had inside the church.
Yes. That's it.
All
And
right.
the beauty of it is you can validate. So if the pastor's telling you this stuff, I mean, just like he just stated to you, he does a outline, a PowerPoint. He's putting his notes together. You can go verify his notes because he's getting it to you.
Absolutely.
You're supposed to verify what's the information people give you. You're supposed to validate it. Validate any type of data. If you look it up on a computer, you need to go validate it.
Exactly. That's right. Yeshaya, he pointed out, and if we truly seek, we will find. That's right.
That's right.
Hallelujah.
That's right. My little saying that I share with internally with Berean Scholar, hey, if we all truly seeking the truth, we should land at the same address.
That's right.
And each one of us is a testament to that.
Exactly.
When
that's how we got connected.
Exactly.
And that's a good point, sis.
So family, again, I'll just say that you guys just it's all about your temperament and understanding who you're doing it for. I'm not doing this to try to pump myself up. No, I'm not doing that. But I'm doing this because this is what we as leaders, we are supposed to do this. We're supposed to do this. If we're going to be watchmen, you got to understand what's going on around you, but you also should be able to engage whatever discussions that may come up to you that's within reason. That's what Christ did.
Hallelujah.
All right. So with that being said, all right, we're going to get ready to wrap this up. Really appreciate you guys. Go back and watch the video. Like I said, this one I shared even more information and sources, and I gave you more clarity just so that way you guys can understand how everything interconnects. But with that being said, Sister Carol, you got the floor, then followed by you, Berean Scholar in the building. You guys got the floor.
Just repeat what I just stated earlier. This information you have now has been proven to you that they've always known who we were. That you've got an understanding now that the Spanish Inquisition was not about some Spanish people, it was about us, Negroes, aka Hebrew Israelites. And that everything that has gone on, the white supremacy was the tone of standard that we were buckled under or bow down to or oppressed into. And he proved that to you tonight.
Hallelujah.
I'm on. Appreciate it, Sister Carol. Thought you had some more to say, but appreciate you.
No, I'm gonna let us stand right there.
Amen.
You proved it to them tonight.
Hallelujah.
Amen. Amen. Ren Scholar, next up is you.
I want to thank you for laying out that you gave the juror so much evidence and laying out. And I know you didn't touch all of what you had.
No,
there's a lot more that proves who we are, people. You are the called out ones. You are the line of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You are a beautiful thing. The lies that we've been told all our lives, the indoctrination, we need to say this again and again. Our skin tone is a glorious thing. Who we are is called by the Most High. It's a gift. It's a blessing. So those lies that they try to put on those people who mutation of who we are, we don't stand in that. We don't live in that. And we go forth. And the people if you're awake tonight, listen to this, you called to learn this so you can go out and be a light.
That's right.
And I appreciate that. Appreciate it. And real quick, I see someone jumped in and said my Spanish and Portuguese ancestors were Sephardic. I'm going to say this again. I'm not sure if you trolling or did not catch the beginning of the lesson. Review the beginning of the lesson and you'll rethink of what you just said. I mean, because for me, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. So I encourage you to watch the lesson if you just came in. But if you watch the lesson from the beginning and you're trolling, then I'll remove your comments. Then that means you're trolling. So that doesn't mean anything. I mean, what does that really entail? No one here is impressed with that because we know the meaning of that. Now, if you're going to say to us that you are an Israelite based on for X, Y, Z, that's one thing. But a construct that was created in the 7th century, between the 7th and the 12th century, that holds no weight. So that means nothing. That's, that's nice. Like my grandmother would say, that's cute. But I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but that really doesn't mean anything over here. Go back and listen to the lesson. You'll see why. All right. With that being said, family, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up in the words of Yahweh that was given to Moses in Exodus chapter 14, verse 13 and 14. He was told to give this encouraging word to the people. Fear ye not, stand still, see the salvation of Yahweh. And these Egyptians that you see here today, they will not have power over you ever again. The Most High will fight for you. But family, here's the kicker. We have to hold our peace. In the Hebrew text, the Hebrew word that you see there for peace or transliterated for peace is the word charash, which means be quiet. I'll say it again. It means be quiet. Sometimes we talk too much. Sometimes we don't understand the importance of calculated silence. With that being said, can't go back, can't stay here. Keep moving forward. Shalom.
Listen, Genesis chapter 11, verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this back, Genesis 14, verse 13, Abraham steps on the scene. Being a descendant of Shem, which is a fact, means Abraham too was black. Abraham, born in the city of a black man, called Nimrod, grandson of Ham. Ham had 4 sons. One was named Canaan. Here, let me do some explaining. Abraham, Isaac was Jacob had 12 sons, for real, and these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10.